settle. All right, I will call to order our August 18th OSAC meeting. So we'll do roll call.
Kristen Joyce,
Present.
David Rossi,
Here.
Nikki LaRochelle,
Here.
Chris Tennell,
Here.
Bobby Zanka,
Here.
Jay Beckerman,
Present.
and Matt Powers is absent this evening.
Okay. So approval of our July 21st minutes, any comments or issues? Good there. Someone want to move to approve?
So moved.
Second. Great. Okay, and then any issues with our agenda? All right, so non-agenda item, public comment. Does anyone have anything? Great. Moving along. Okay, staff summary.
Okay, I have a few items I want to talk a little more about. First is just friendly reminder, the Starburst Award. That is next Wednesday, the 27th in the morning, Blue Lakes. I just need to hear from any of you that would like to attend so we can work out logistics. So please let us know. Love to have you. Second was I emailed this on Friday, but want to make sure that BOSAC is supportive of this general letter of support for the STRAP program. Tried to highlight that it's going to be important to get public input and scientific analysis, but we're supportive of trying to balance protecting the resources with preserving the user experience. I want to make sure that you guys are all okay with that. Then of course you would be welcome to comment individually, but as far as a body, would you be supportive of that letter? Great. Yeah. Got another letter that came up kind of last minute from the Forest Service. They have an opportunity. Some of this details are confidential, but they want to apply for funding, grant funding, to purchase some public land in the mosquito range to preserve recreation access in 2027. They're looking for letters of support by Wednesday to move forward with applying for funding to be able to purchase lands that will allow people to recreate in the mosquito range. And so we wanted to support that as a town. I want to make sure you guys are okay with that. Just kind of a generic letter of support. Great. This is easy. Next is Breck history. I don't know if you got a chance to see that link in the staff summary. It went to them requesting approval to expand their scope of work. Story is Delorium boarding house. If you haven't seen it, came out great, as of the Preston cabins, and it went faster than they expected. So they're there. They have some cost savings and time savings, and they have the materials and staff up there, and they recognize while there that the blacksmith shop, which is directly west of the boarding house, could use a new roof and improvements to the foundation and drainage around the base of it. They're not asking for any extra money, but because this wasn't part of their original work plan for the year, we want to get BOSAC approval before them moving forward. And OSAC did approve this last week. Okay. Let's see. Alex is going to provide some further explanation in how Nutrifix works in treating reed canary grass.
Yeah, just a clarification on the Nutrifix product. It's not a herbicide, does not directly kill the targeted species. But the concept is, invasive species are greedy and they actually like disturbed nutrient poor soils. So not only is the Nutrifix giving your native species a better starting point when we reseed, but actually it negatively affects the growth and ability for the invasives to compete. So yeah, spraying with a herbicide kills them, but then it leaves a pretty non-nutrient soil. So that might encourage, the concept is that those invasive could come right back. Of course they could with this too, but it's just trying something different to provide a more micronutrient dense soil for replanting.
Do we have any information on how effective this is?
We just started testing a number of different methods. There's 28 test plots in the nature preserve. And actually, we're gonna try to get out there and do a site visit. Probably not related to a BOSAC meeting, but we'll send out our consultants in the field right now. So we're trying to figure out a date before it gets too cold to go out there and check out the plots, but we'll send information via email.
I was really meaning, do we have evidence from other users?
It's been very effective against cheatgrass in Western Slope in Wyoming, Montana. This is kind of a new thing to try it with reed canary grass and Canada thistle. But we'll send information via email when we're going to do that, and highly encourage you guys to come check it out.
Thanks, Alex. And then Tony's been working on setting up a field trip.
So we had talked about going to Jefferson County. And I've got a few dates in October that could potentially work. Roughly maybe October 15th or 16th. It's a Wednesday, Thursday. They are available also the following week as well, Monday through Thursday. But just kind of, with the weather and everything, don't want to be too late and make sure we catch some good fall weather. So we can communicate via email with those dates. I can send that out to you guys and you can respond to me. Those are kind of tentative. And the plan would be to possibly September at our BOSAC meeting, go over some topics that you guys would like to discuss. And then we would go down in the morning-ish and maybe have a Q&A with them for about 2 hours with some of their directors, maybe some of their advisory boards, covering some of the hot topics, and then have lunch and then head out for a field trip and have a nice tour of the Plains to Peaks Trail. So kind of a tentative schedule.
Great.
Okay, that's the stuff we wanted to mention. Do anyone have any questions or comments on any of the staff summary content?
Don't think so.
Great. Okay, well, let's welcome THK. We have Carrie, Laura, Craig, and Sam. And just a overview, a reminder of kind of where this is in the schedule. They'll be presenting the first concept ideas tonight and gaining input from BOSAC. Wednesday night this week, we have the open house at the rec center. So trying to get more public input. We're going to have an additional outreach session at Vista Verde early in September on the 4th. But September 9th, they'll go to council. So they'll have some sort of refined version of what they present tonight based on this feedback. And then take council's feedback. And then the next round of proposed final concepts would be BOSAC October 20th, council in early November.
Are you ready for us? Okay. Can you, let's see if we can, or is that working for, yep, I can hear it. Okay. All right. I'm Craig Karn with THK Associates and glad to be back again. We've been having a lot of fun since the last time we were here and have some ideas to share with you, and I look forward to your comments and then your own ideas. Hopefully we've spurred some other ideas as well, because we don't have them all. You all have some great ideas to share with us. But we want to start with let Laura and Carrie kind of present their work to date in terms of public outreach and then the environmental analysis work, because that drives what we do. So let's hear from them first, and then we'll tell you what we have in terms of concept ideas.
You have it.
We have the go button. There we go. Details.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Tanner. I'm a natural resource planner with ERO Resources as part of the THK consultant team. So myself and an ecologist from ERO were on site in June to take a look around and see what the existing conditions were of the site, particularly as it relates to vegetation, hydrology of the river, the wildlife habitat, and some rec resources. Sorry, I was trying to speak up. Okay, next one. So while we were out there, we also want to take a look at what were some of the opportunities of the site as well as constraints. So some of the things we came up with as far as opportunities go, there were really great thriving species close to the river that were planted in the last couple of years that are continuing to do well. And we see that being a great opportunity in the next few years for those to continue to flourish. We notice that Blue River is obviously an attraction for wildlife coming down from particularly the west side and the mountainside there to the river, and that makes for a great opportunity for visitors of the site to see different species, elk, moose, and any small mammals, especially raptors too. And then also we recognize the opportunity for a lot of different connections for non-motorized, being the rec path just adjacent to the property, as well as some of the other trails that are in the vicinity. And then, of course, several areas of potential river access that we made sure to let the design team know so they can incorporate that into their designs. Some of the constraints, so while some of the vegetation is doing well, some are struggling a little bit, particularly some of the willow stakes along the riverbank with some erosion and things like that. So might have to keep trying with those as time goes on. There will likely be a little decrease in wildlife over time, just given an uptick in users to the area. So something just to be aware of for looking forward to wildlife in the future on the property. We notice that social trail formation is already occurring along the riverbank. So that's something that's going to be difficult to control and keep in check moving forward. But good to know that there's already areas where people are directly trying to access. And then on that same vein, keeping visitors from leaving those designated trails that will be created will be difficult. So just given the layout of the property and being so accessible to the river, it'll be really important to provide specific areas for people to go directly to the river and try to keep them out of areas you don't want them in. And then one thing we also noticed was just the high traffic on that rec path. I think that's going to be a long-term concern, and just particularly with safety, but you're going to have a lot of users coming in and out of the property, and it might be a little intense on some summer afternoons. Oh, sorry, this is a lot of words on one page, but some preliminary recommendations, a lot of kind of what I've already said, but just focusing some weed control efforts on the northern and southern portions of the property just to tackle some of those list B and C species, as well as some other non-listed invasives. Consider incorporating some more shrub species along the riverbank where that erosion is present and a little more persistent. And then I think it was noted that there would likely not be public access on the west side, but really designating that as a no public access area will help to keep the wildlife coming down from the mountainside, and having that access to the river be available will be really important moving forward. And then using some interpretive signage to alert users of why that's being designated as such will be helpful in the long run. And then we talked a bit about incorporating a raptor nest platform. We noticed a lot of raptors in the area, but given the low amount of actual high vegetation on site, they're not actually roosting on the property. So potentially something on the west side to encourage them to come to the property a little more often. And then along that same vein as well, adding some wildlife cameras just so you get a little better understanding of who all is coming in contact with the property, what species you're seeing at different times of year. Just might be nice to track over the next few years as you're building things out. And then for deterrence for social trail creation and use, adding shrubs and rocks, things like that along key areas where you don't want people to go will be really key, as well as fencing and ropes, things like that initially when vegetation isn't super high and you don't have a great way of cordoning off areas. That might be one route to take. And then of course signage, you can try with the methods of a plea to the public to stay off of these areas that are sensitive just based on restoration that might be in progress, and things like that, as well as providing access to the property from various locations will be really important just to help people recognize that there are plenty of areas to access it and not be prone to creating their own trails on. So then this is a map that kind of distills all of that long text into one picture. So have a couple locations of wildlife camera areas on the western side, as well as that no public access designation, which is kind of the yellow orange shading there. And then a potential raptor roost site, something that's a little off of the river, so it's not getting hit by wind all the time, but has a little bit closer access to the woods area there. And then the high priority weed control areas in the northern and southern portion of the property that are in the pink zones. And then there's several potential beach areas that are really complementary of both the landscape itself and the restoration that's ongoing.
Can you say, what's a raptor roost site look like?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're kind of interesting. It's like a wooden platform that's so many feet in the air, and it would encourage them to nest there along the river. Oh, we could include some photos.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Be neat to see.
I think one of the Silverthorn, try the peregrines away from the. Google it.
I've seen one.
Right.
I want to switch me.
No, I think I can just, can you all hear me okay? Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Hickey with CDR Associates. I attended the last meeting virtually, so it's great to be here with you all in person. This time around, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our phase 1 engagement, what we did, what we found, and how it fits into the designs that Sam and Craig have put together so far. So what you see on the left here is a photo from one of the 2 community workshops we held in July at Vista Verde. We had informational boards and a lot of precedents and kind of example photos that the community was able to react to, leave sticky notes on what they liked, what they didn't like. We gave them a lot of background on the parcel itself, what piece of it is set aside for open space and the goals of this project generally. Along with the in-person engagement, on those days, we ran an online survey, and the open space and trail staff was able to include a question about McCain open space in the open house kind of interactive poll there. And that was able to give us a lot of really good feedback where we focused in on community desires around amenities and access for the open space. So the phase 1 was really focused on understanding the community vision from our engagement side of things. And I pulled out one of the quotes that really stood out from our survey responses, that it's a special and important place to have easily accessible, since a lot of the Vista Verde residents are not able to take advantage of other open spaces during the day. So that was really cool to hear from a neighboring resident themselves. So I'll jump into some of the findings. I'll start with what we found about amenity interests. So the chart you can see on the left is combined responses from the open house poll and the online survey, which asked the same question about what kind of amenities are you looking for? And folks could choose as many options as they'd like. And there was an other option as well. The strongest interests were in walking and biking trails and access to the river for fishing. Secondarily, kind of this group of low impact features like shaded areas, scenic viewpoints, and generally places to gather were of interest. And then there's kind of this smattering of ideas like play areas, seating, public art, interpretive signs. I think we heard about a community garden idea, and they were mentioned less often, but cumulatively made up about a quarter of all responses. And so THK has been really thoughtful about how to incorporate many interests in the concept design, kind of scaled to the level of interest by the community. And as far as access, we just asked about this in the online survey, if you want to go to the next slide. Most respondents indicated an interest or planned access from the Blue River Bikeway, kind of complementing your finding of a lot of people really use that amenity and would like to use it to access the space eventually. And also from nearby neighborhoods like Vista Verde that has another rec path option that could fit in as well. There's also interest in creating or improving safe connections across Highway 9 to get to the space from the other side of the highway. And I think the biggest thing about access that we heard was an interest in really balancing the impact of folks accessing the open space site and how that might overflow into the neighboring neighborhoods. So Vista Verde, for example, mentioned there's some limited residential parking already. And so they would like to know that people won't be parking in the neighborhood to access the open space. And so just being mindful of that kind of cascade effect on access is what we heard. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we're up to next. We are very excited that we were able to launch a story map a couple weeks ago. So that's that QR code on the left, and that will really be a hub for, it includes kind of what I've told you here today, an overview of the phase 1 engagement. It's going to house a survey about the concepts we'll show you today that will launch on Wednesday to the public and keep open for a couple weeks. And then we're just going to keep updating that, and it's housed with the Breckenridge GIS, so you all can continue to use that as a platform if you're interested for the next phases of McCain Open Space. Obviously, we're here with you tonight to talk about some of the concepts and get feedback on that. We will have a specific neighborhood event at Vista Verde in a couple weeks here, and then talk to town council. On the virtual side, we have that webpage, that story map. We'll have that feedback survey, and we will be scheduling a coordination meeting with the Forest Service and CPW to make sure the concepts are getting feedback from them as well. I'm happy to answer any more questions about engagement now or later. Maybe we should dive into concepts. I don't know. I'll leave
I would
it.
also just encourage all of you guys to check the story map out. It's really, really cool. It's really well put together. And I think it's a really kind of interesting interactive piece. So just as a note.
It was linked in our packet. So yeah, I'm sure some of us took a look. Yeah, it was great.
I think you got the full engagement summary too. So if you have questions about that summary, feel free to ask them later.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that was all great information that we got since we were here last. This first graphic is an opportunities map we actually created while we were still kind of in the analysis process. We'd look at a lot of the physical design elements, but I think in particular ERO's environmental analysis really helped us guide this. But this was just kind of what we saw as the synthesis of all the analysis we'd done at the time. And the information we've gotten subsequently from our outreach and the environmental analysis really kind of seemed to align with this basic idea. And so you see these basic forms of, as an example, feature areas that we saw out there. We think those were invited and identified in ERO's map you saw, where are the better places we can engage with the river and probably manage the impacts better and the like. And we think that it's really at the point bars, which are the inside banks of the bends in the river, where it's actually a sedimentary, there's sediment being deposited as opposed to the erosionary cut banks on the other side. And they're generally gentler slopes. And if we do get foot traffic and people moving in, it kind of heals itself with the normal process of the river or dropping additional sediment in. So we've really kind of focused, as you can see, on those 3 areas on this map that we did. Subsequently, we did some work. I'm not sure if you're aware of, but we helped out with the work that Norris Design and Public Works has been doing with this parking area study and their snow storage. And that kind of, you'll see on our concept plans, kind of actually gave us an opportunity to finish a part of the plan that was kind of up in the air before that and help them to, start planning in more detail how they might make those other improvements on the other properties. So you'll see a bit of that difference. The 2 concepts we're going to show, there are a lot of, I would say there are more similarities than differences, but what we really are trying to get our arms around and hopefully get some of your input about as this front country open space, really important to balance the recreation and access opportunities with conservation of this great natural space. It's where it's all kind of meets here. And in fact, everything kind of west of the river is essentially back country. And so we have a pretty immediate and abrupt interface between what will probably be a lot of the public out there, but a great opportunity to really kind of see that backcountry exposure. And so we have some ideas we think can take advantage of that. So we can always come back to this graphic, but you'll see similarities. And that's always fun because when we got more information, it didn't dispel anything. It really kind of built upon it. Again, two concepts. What I really want to go through with each of them is explain the commonalities, but what some of the differences are. So with concept one, and again, as you can see with this, and then the next plan will show you, we've had that opportunity to kind of complete the connectivity of the open space over to, where Vista Verde is at today and where the trail has been built to date there on that property. Really gave us an opportunity to kind of look at it, see if there are other opportunities, and how, we might, again, balance that conservation with recreation access. And I think one of the things we really saw was that most of the people that, contributed ideas about what should be out here, and I thought that, the list of elements were all very appropriate for this open space. We didn't get a lot of conversations about where the soccer fields go and all those kind of things that are more typical kind of urban park functions. So that's probably a good thing. I think most of the people we talked with really do see this as an open space setting, and let's keep it that way. So that I think that's what will move us forward. It's really a function of intensity of the development and the program and things that we put out here. What's an appropriate balance? So hopefully I'll convey that with these plans. And if you have questions, which I'm sure you will, to understand that, I'm looking forward to hearing them. A good example would be, on that opportunities map, we had kind of those three feature areas that you kind of saw with the big yellow bubbles. Really, as we move down to Vista Verde, there's a couple of other areas. In particular, there's an area very close to the existing apartments out on the river that could be another good point for interaction that's very immediate to the, residents of Vista Verde. And it might drive us toward what type and level of improvements we put there. A big thing that we looked at, of course, the existing trail at Vista Verde is paved. And it's probably, I think, a 10-foot width at least. I haven't measured it, but it's a pretty significant trail. So it seems like in some capacity, we need to complete that and not have that be a dead end. There are a lot of other trail improvements. In fact, every time I go back, we went out a little early today when we got up here and looked again. There's a lot of existing wider paved trail improvements in the existing development areas. And I think we want to make sure that that gets connected to this space, but probably more importantly, gets you connected up to the very south end of the space where the regional trail comes in. And that's really providing access to that so people can move on into town, but take access to that trail as well. This first plan shows an extension of that paved trail, as you can see in kind of the heavy black line that would extend to the south. And then we also, again, working with Norris Design and coming up with concepts for how we can buffer that future parking and snow storage that they're improving, is accommodating a comfortable area that we can build a meaningful berm to screen those uses, combined with certainly some planting. But we wanted to make sure that landform actually kind of had some gradients and the like that didn't seem out of place out there. So, we propose that you look at more gentle slopes of more of a, 5 or 8 or even 10-to-1 slope on the side of berms, rather than, 3-to-1. How quickly can we pile up the dirt? How high, and have it not look like it's in, part of this natural setting. So we've kind of proposed about 100-foot or so corridor to use for that berming and buffering, which is kind of equidistant to where the floodplain along that section basically follows that trail on the north end. So we're also trying to keep trail improvements where we can out of the floodplain per se, so we don't necessarily have those conflicts. There will be areas where we'll out of necessity have some of the trails within floodplain, but trying to minimize it with the alignments. So that seemed to work out pretty well, and also work out pretty well with the parking lot planning that they're doing and the like. That's consistent with both plans. So you can see that black, hard paved trail continues up all the way to the south end. As it moves along McCain Road, like we showed in the opportunities map, we wanted to create some separation there. So it still continues to feel like you're in an open space setting, but at least be able to screen the road per se. Some of the road noise that just comes from wheel noise, not only from McCain, but even from Highway 9 out further to the distance. So that as you move through the space, we didn't want it to feel like it's just a trail along the edge of the road. We wanted it to be in the open space. So I think that works out pretty well. You can also see that then we extend kind of on the eastern area of these future development areas for snow storage and parking and the like, that I think it's important to continue a paved trail section that would connect to the shuttle service they'll have at the parking lot. But also you can see we've shown a trail coming from Vista Verde, from both sides of it per se, in existing development, to look for ways to make and complete those connections to those uses to the east. An opportunity that presents also for both concept plans, if we move that trail and that connecting trail into the open space there to the west of McCain Road, we have an opportunity to change what's now bike lanes on that road and potentially accommodate on-street parking, because we're moving that bike trail into the open space. And that could help address some of the parking issues of Vista Verde being concerned that their parking is going to get overwhelmed. And I think it also just means that people could have better access along where the open space does interface with McCain Road, rather than having bike lanes and not really having very limited parking. I think there's an opportunity to look at that, to make parking accessible without having to build a parking lot per se for the open space. The other thing, and then the balancing act you'll see with Plan 2, when we get to that, is can we reduce some of that paving? Do we need all of these paved trail areas, or can we reduce some of that to soft surface trails that serve the same purpose? Sam, is there anything in particular that comparing the two plans that I should point out before we move on to on this particular plan?
So no, like most of the differences between these, and we'll talk about them a little bit more when we get to the feature areas, because we have more information about each of the 7 areas that we've outlined as feature areas. But mostly it's the level of impact and the level of intensity in terms of construction and what would be done. And so in all of these areas, they are consistent in both plans, but how those get addressed will vary depending on what level of improvement is sought after for those specific areas.
Sam.
Nikki, are we holding questions till after the presentation? Is that the idea?
What would you prefer?
Doesn't matter. I think if it's relevant to what we're looking at right now, we're happy to answer it.
Did you have?
Yeah, on the 6-foot trail that's going through here, it says soft surface paved. It says 6 feet paved, 4 feet soft surface. Is this like a rec path?
That's just something I wanted to throw out there. I think that the existing trail is probably wider. Again, it's that balancing act that we could potentially look at some less hard paving and accommodate some of that use with soft paving. But we also can build an 8 or 10-foot trail in the same corridor. But
Is that a suggestion of paved and soft surface right next to each other? I know that's something we heard in the community meeting, or are you?
yeah,
in
that's
either or?
kind of to both. I mean,
Okay.
one of the things that we find on a lot of major trails is a lot of people, especially if they're going to use this, they live in Vista Verde or work nearby. They're going to do a morning run, or like I walk every morning around the park by my house before I go to work. That runners in particular would rather not, in most cases, run on that hard concrete or asphalt surface. And so it gives that trail corridor a little more, multiple uses, especially for runners. But that can also be done if we feel like, and again, I'm not sure exactly what a typical rec trail would be. They're usually 8 or 10 feet. That can be 8 feet with a 2-foot jogging trail on the side, or just the 8 feet. But it's just been a nice feature that we've done on some other community trails on projects where it's providing more opportunities for use. You still have a good hard surface if you want to push a stroller on it, things like that, but you also have some soft surface. And as a general rule of thumb, just trying to have the right amount of hard paved surface, because every square foot of concrete or asphalt we put out there has an environmental impact, has a cost impact, all those, and a visual impact as well.
We're talking now about 10 feet wide trail, 8 and 2, right?
Yeah, or some combination there can
Or
be.
even less than 10 feet wide.
One of the things we learned when we went out there recently was how small this piece of property really is. And it seems like a 10-foot wide trail that goes along the whole thing. To me, that seems like a lot.
Seems a bit much. That's
It
what I
it
thought.
does, when we don't have that much space and taking up that big a part of it for a hard surface or a combination.
We'll have to work with open space staff and kind of come to, you know, what's appropriate there as we move toward final design, but we want to see what other people think. And that's been our general observation as well. And in fact, when I told Sam when we drove by there tonight, I said, every time I come by here, it seems a little bit smaller.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for us.
I have a question that might be better for staff or council. Is what's the latest with the realignment of the bike path? And do we have a say in that? I know it feels like it's gone back and forth. And I know we've requested a couple updated maps for the next iteration of this parcel that I think will help, but I think understanding what jurisdiction we have over the alignment of the bike path will help me at least determine whether we need this much pavement within open space at all. Because if the bike path is going to continue to exist right out of it, I would probably advocate for less pavement within this existing plan. But so I guess that's just a question maybe for the town.
That's some of the same questions we had. And hopefully
Okay, great. Well, two birds, one stone.
we'll hopefully we can
I
get.
don't even know who has the answer to that, like who has. the
I
answer to
can
that
weigh
question.
in a little bit in the fact that I know that there's a desire not to have the bike path cross the road like it does now. Like that was one of the negatives of
Dangerous.
the road. And so I think there is,
House, or are you talking about?
no, on the other side, on the south side,
Okay.
where it comes, yes, when it comes off of Coin Valley and how the road crosses the bike path, and that's obviously not ideal, but it's workable at the moment until more planning is. So the short answer is yes, you do have a lot of say in what that looks like.
Okay, great, thank you.
And could you explain again how we're getting parking without parking spaces?
Yeah, I believe, and I should have put a picture in here. I parked my car. In fact, when we drove through there tonight, if you go up to the north where there's construction complete or under construction, there were several cars parked what was clearly intended to be bike lane, no parking. There's room for it. If we internalize those bike lanes off of McCain Road and into the project, I believe there's more than enough room on the street to create parking on at least one side. Probably both, but really one's enough. I measured, you could probably park 60 cars from one end to the other, just where the road touches the open space, by just simply having parallel parking there rather than a bike lane. Something to explore, because, you know, there's 6 parking spots in America for every car. Try to manage that with what resources we already have where we.
I think the one thing we might want to think about is road bikes coming down that road. And if we want to still keep a bike lane for road bikes, which keeps them off the rec path going further in, just to reduce some of that potential conflict with slower users.
Yeah, I think you may see it. I would suspect that the kind of users you'd see riding on the paved trails within the open space would be people that are moving in and out of the community and coming to the regional to the river trail. We have our same concerns about trying to make that a safer crossing up there at the south end. And as you see in some of our blow-ups, I think if we do things to bring it to people's attention, you're changing the space. Again, a lot of times just managing people's driving behavior. To do landscape and some improvements that change the perception of that will slow people down right away. And to do a much better job of making sure it's real clear there's a crossing there. I think there are things we can do to make it more visible, and we'll show you one of the enlargements we did, some ideas we have that can help to do.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Sure.
To Mark, is that, so on the current rec path, is that like difference in like speed of biking and cycling?
Yeah, I
Like, is
mean,
that
there've been
already
some concerns if we if we just continue the rec path south of Vista Verde, that we're gonna have a bunch of fast moving vehicles coming through if we just continue that through.
Mhm.
But one of the ways to potentially alleviate that is to continue to encourage the road bikers, the faster users, if you will, to just have use McCain Road. to move through that area, which a lot of them will naturally do anyway. But that's just one thing to consider. If you take away their opportunity to have a shoulder, that, they may not be as likely to use the road.
Okay, so there's kind of a desire for McCain Road to alleviate some of the rec path pressure of like fast moving
I think,
users.
I mean, look for the rest of BOSAC to weigh in on that, obviously in the council, but it seems like that would be preferable.
So you're moving bikes off of the rec path and putting them on a car road?
Road bikes, the ones that are really moving through, they just want to move through here anyway. And that way you keep speeds down and it creates a little safer environment, probably on the rec path itself if it wanders back through to Vista Verde.
And would the town consider putting the e-bike charging station, where you park your e-bikes there too?
Isn't there one up at Vista Verde, 1 or 2 right now?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Mhm.
So we
Thank you.
will, briefly touch on the second, just so you can see the differences here, because the callouts are pretty much exact.
I do have a thought in that regard, but then I'll jump to this plan. If our goal is to avoid some user conflicts on the regional trail along the highway, I think building this internal trail in the open space will take the not head down lycra pants guys. They'll come into here, and then the commuter cyclists and the go fast folks. I'm the not the go fast bike rider. That's after an ACL injury of many decades ago, I was told, stop running, start riding. But I'm a bicycle rider, not a cyclist. I just wonder if we wouldn't get some of the more recreational users that will move in and use the internal trail and make it safer for the commuter trail, because they have an alternative to move through here. But
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, the one thing is a commuter trail, though, the idea is that's gonna go away, the existing one, because we don't like that crossing out at Fairview there at the roundabout. It's pretty dangerous right now.
Yeah,
Further-
roundabouts are not
Yeah.
friendly to.
So we want to kind of move folks in a little bit and bring them through the site as opposed to continuing to parallel the highway out there.
All right, I
That's good
understand
to
that.
know.
Yeah.
I think it makes completing the connection along McCain Road with the trail to the north, looking to do that, because there is some of that already exists. We saw out on site in the more development areas. There's an attached 8 or 10 foot walk along McCain Road, and maybe we can accommodate both there.
Mhm.
But you're right. So the serious cyclists, they like to have straighter alignments and go faster. It's the nature of the beast. But that's something we can certainly talk about.
I think that on-road parking would come in most handy during the winter, where we're having parking constraints when the road bikers aren't out there. So maybe perhaps it's a seasonal.
Could be
thing.
seasonal, yeah. So the biggest difference in this plan is really what level of paved trail do we need? So the big difference is if you see on the kind of north end of the main part of the open space, kind of middle of the plan, we've changed that whole western segment to be soft surface trail. And that the hard paved trails are what you see in the black line. So we've just removed that component of hard paved trail and had the single one that either comes from McCain Road to the north, if we can complete that connection, and completes the connection from the Vista Verde, where it's completed to the edge of the property, down past where will be the transit stop for the parking and the like, and then continues on north. So really, that's the fundamental difference of these two overall plans. We have some enlargement of each of the feature areas that we can show you to tell you a little bit more detail. Again, it's that balancing. How much do we want to bring that kind of user into the open space, or can we accommodate them with this western trail segment with a couple important connections so that we can keep the trails within the open space at some kind of soft surface paving? Widths and alignments can vary depending on where we put them, but that's really probably the fundamental difference between these two concepts is weighing that. You'll see in the details, this lesser improved plan, we have fewer locations where we've proposed shade structures and, physical improvements per se, where it's kept more of just shaded spaces with trees as opposed to a shade structure. That'll be easier to see in more detail. with each of the plans. And so if we don't have any more questions about overall, we can look at some of those details and we'll go through them quickly and then we'll just solicit comments, see what you think.
So before we get to those, there'll be a handful of slides that just have a couple of images of the different discovery play concept ideas that we had come up with. And I won't spend any major time on them unless anyone has questions about specific features. But they're really just a menagerie of things that we can try to include throughout the entire open space, which we have shown on some of the blow up plans as well, but just as a reference.
Yeah. And that was a pretty common thing we heard from people, that was opportunities for play and in a more of an open space setting. Yeah, some of these, if you can see all these, we can come back and look at them in more detail. You've had a chance to look at them. Just ways to incorporate things that are more discovery play as opposed to, a traditional play structure per se. That
Oh, they look really cool.
yeah, they're really fun. We're actually working on a project in Thornton. Some of these images are from there, where we're building a discovery play area associated with the Anythink library that they're building up there now. Again, it's having fun. One of the things, and in fact, one of the feature areas we'll talk about is we bring in more pollinator species. We'll bring also not just the plants, we'll bring all the bugs and birds that come with them. And so can be a really fun part of discovery play kids as well.
I'll touch on this really quick.
This last one we want to touch on because it kind of comes into play with the issue of, trying to make sure we're building a safer and kind of calming traffic and calming the cyclists down too, because it's not just cars. We need to calm the cyclists down when they come to these places. Sam and I drove around, and in fact, when we were up here last, and we wanted to look around just through Breckenridge and go, what are some elements that we see in Breckenridge that are really kind of play into the community identity overall that we could bring out to the McCain open space and incorporate there. And we consistently saw a lot of these wonderful rock walls in the roundabouts, screening the parking area very near to this building, and a lot of different locations like that. We see that as being really interesting, kind of a signature element that really says, Breckenridge to us, right at the roundabouts. And even we walked a little bit on the trails here in town. There's some much older walls that are the same big stones right along the river in kind of parts of Old Town, that we think bringing some of that element of design out to the McCain can make a strong visual connection and really make it feel like it's, again, another kind of identifiable part of Breckenridge and use these same materials there. So we'll talk about that when we look at some of these enlargements. Here's the entry there at Coin Valley Road and McCain Road. One of the things that I've learned as a planner and community designer for a long time is if we can change the driver perception by changing the scale of the space when you enter a space, it'll slow them down. Even the debate about parked cars on the street. I'm a firm believer and think it's been proven out through designs I've done and a lot of other things I've seen in a lot of years that parked cars actually improve the safety situation on the road. It's the best thing you can do to slow, especially if you have a road that's too wide to begin with. Parked cars play that down. Now, the big conflict they create is with cyclists, because I'm a kind of a semi-cyclist, as I'd call it, it's called dooring.
Mm-hmm.
Doors opening on the parked cars. So that combination of the two, boy, you gotta be really careful as a cyclist. That's why I'm thinking if we put parking on the street, we either want to move the cyclists in or accommodate them on the other side of the street. Can we build a dedicated bike lane on the opposite side of the street from the parking to make it? So those are things we can do. We want to create some landforms that again will kind of change the perception and tighten up the space as you enter there. Just tall enough to change the driver perception a little bit. Not so tall that they block the views, but really just kind of create a foreground. And you can also see we're suggesting those areas in Browner where we're suggesting that we bring those signature stones and incorporate them into the berms where we can see them from the street. And it makes a visual connection. It says you're entering somewhere special, like now when you're entering the roundabouts or the parking. It cues you to pay attention, and it just slows you down. It creates a nice aesthetic. We've also shown there's an opportunity, perhaps we span the road with signage that announces the name of this space if it stays McCain or gets a new name. That again creates a gateway, makes people stop, cross that trail in front of it. We can probably do better things to make that trail more identifiable. We can do things on either ends to slow the cyclists down too. we can put rumble strips in the trail, and there's a lot of things that cyclists can be calmed by how we design the space, just like we can do it with automobiles as well. So we thought that was pretty important. It's an opportunity to enhance the entry, but also I think, remind people you're moving into a different space here and kind of calm that driver behavior to get off the highway and be zooming on through the project. Anything you want to add, Sam?
Yeah, one of the other signature elements that you'll see carried through all of these plans is the number 5 up there, which are these cobblestone barriers. The idea behind that is that we would sort of look to design barriers without fences, that we could use some of the material that's already on site, such as the cobble, which we have an infinite supply of it out there. And you combine that with the terrain manipulation of these berms with some vegetation spliced in between, and suddenly you have a really effective barrier without having to build a physical barrier. And really why you're seeing it in these certain places is because it's very intentionally placed to ensure that people are directed the way that we want them. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a defending the river way. We're really close. This one area in particular is very close to the river. And I could see very easily someone just wanting to meander 5 feet off the rec path there and stand on the river. And that this location is just not a safe place to do that. And so the idea, and you'll see it in most of these plans, is we've done those in the areas where we don't want people walking and where we can ensure that we're protecting that portion of the river. And then we do less of them in areas where we are trying to encourage the movement down towards the water. But that's really just sort of a consistent element across all of these feature areas, because aesthetics for one, but for two, the actual functional purpose of it as well.
I'm sure you've looked through the Blue River as it goes through Blue River Plaza, and it's a playground. And I am hoping we're not doing that here.
Right, exactly. And this would be, one of those spots where someone could easily come through and be like, oh, look how close we are to the water. Let's go and see what we can do with it. And so we want to provide those opportunities, but we want to do it in a way that's safe, controlled, and also effective for the watershed long term. One thing I'll note is this shade structure, which is on number 4. For example, on a lower intensity concept, such as concept 2, maybe instead of a shade structure there, it is a grove of trees with tables. And then therefore you're still getting shade, still getting a gathering space, but you're not having to build a physical structure. And so a lot of the differences between these two plans are that it would be, maybe it's not an actual structure, but it's shade trees. Maybe it's not a bench, but it's a rock that you can sit on, things like that. Ways that we can think about what the program is made up of, and less like what we aren't or are doing, if that makes sense. So then on this second one, this is our first feature area on the river, and this is the closest one to the gateway that we were just looking at. This is where we were looking at the roost site as well. The idea of this location is that we could build some sort of a viewing blind for that roost site. And for example, as I went with the last slide, I would say in this location, that number 1 is either a physical blind that gets constructed, or if it's a less intensive plan, maybe it's just spotting scopes on the edge of the trail where there's still a clearing where you can still see them, but we're not building a giant structure to accommodate that. Next to the bird viewing platform, we have one of our first discovery play features, which is that bird's nest sort of fort that we had in the Preston images. And we could do anything in this location. That's just one of the suggestions. I think it would be fitting, especially if there are raptors roosting out here. It'd be kind of cool to have a little nest play area next to it. But then again, you can see the very intentional berming and screening of the river edge here on the left-hand side of the concept. That trail gets pretty close, and the elevation between the trail and the river is nil. So building those berms, stacking vegetation in there if we can, it's going to be important and crucial to making sure that people aren't getting into the water at that location. And the same is true for the edge along the trail here. This whole sort of edge is meant to screen so that you can see the wildlife, but the wildlife can't necessarily see you. So in this location, you wouldn't have direct river access. It would be that preserved sort of meadow space that you're looking out over. The reason we like this location for these things is because this is one spot on site that has a higher elevation than some of the other places. And so actually we can completely construct this trail segment and the blind outside of the floodplain here. We're capable of doing that in this location with the way that the floodplain is mapped. So that combine that with the higher elevation, it's a pretty good spot for those features. I'll move to the next one. This is our little overlook, and I'll let Craig talk to you guys about this one.
So this is out in the center of the space when we look at out in the, what we're calling the meadow, which we're keeping very open. An opportunity for people to move out and discover, elevate it a little bit, give it some prominence. The perimeter walls can be that same kind of signature stone that we've seen in other parts of Breckenridge, like we showed you images of, how to make that connection. But we felt like that place out in the middle was really one of the best spots to preserve the wide open nature of the space and the views up and down the valley into the 10-mile range. In a more intense development of this, we've proposed that a piece of monumental public art be included in it, because it would be very high visibility from around the perimeters. I just did and in fact, it's under construction now, a park in Lone Tree, where we did a piece of monumental art. And we've done it in a couple other projects in Ridgegate, where we've actually gone through a commissioning process and had a design competition to create a piece of art that's appropriate for this space and really kind of has a message about the space. The one we did at Badger Gulch in Lone Tree, we worked with an art consultant to create elements that we gave them kind of rules, right? It wasn't just create a piece of art. It was, these are the kind of things we'd like to see that art convey for the space. Could be a great opportunity to create a landmark element, because I think this is going to be a really important public space as it matures in the future. It can be done without it as well. The images we threw down there in our corner, that's a pretty broad representation. I love the little folksy guy that's out on the highway on your way to Alamosa. I don't know if you've ever seen it out there. The structure in the middle is a big open space back in Michigan, where I'm from. It's a shade structure, but it's a very monumental and artful piece. You can actually see it from the water of Lake Michigan as well. So it's kind of a landmark when you're out on the water as well. Other pieces are just large pieces of monumental art. Not that we would bring totem poles in, that's actually up on Prince Edward Island, but just to represent that kind of scale. But the art could also represent some cultural, interpretation as a part of that, for what is Breckenridge. I don't know what that is, but it's a fun process to go through, and we've done it on some other projects.
So then this is our urban edge, which is feature area 4. This is right along McCain Road as you come around that first corner from the main entrance off of Coin Valley Road. This kind of serves as your big visual cue from Highway 9. These two berms sort of frame this lower level sort of depression. That middle section, it's kind of hard to tell. It would be lower. So you have berms on the side and then a depression in the middle between the two walks. So the idea is really preserving that view from the highway into the open space. And this is in a location it's cited specifically so that that piece in the center that we just looked at would be visible through these berms. So you're kind of creating this approach, this staged element, but it really would help with the signature landmarking of the whole open space and creating that vista that people can recognize almost immediately as like, yes, that's this open space in Breckenridge or whatever. Here we're using a lot of the same thoughts and ideas as the entry area because this is a more urban condition because you're on the road edge. And this is for before you fully transition into the open space. So there's the opportunity to do more of those signature folds. One of my favorite pieces on this area in specific is number 4, which is a little rock snake. Like you go put a bunch of boulders out and make them look like it's a snake, slithering under and over the trail. And I don't know, that could take many forms, but it was another one of those ideas of what can we do to just, get kids excited as they're walking. Well, I just imagine being a 5-year-old coming around that corner and seeing something that resembles a snake, and it would be a pretty cool opportunity to just be able to safely climb on it. And, so the ideas like that. And then maybe it would just be smaller if we were doing something with a lower intensity plan, all those things. The other idea we had in this location was to try to capture water off of McCain Road in whatever way we can. I believe in our previous presentation to you guys, we showed you some curb cuts in the roadway that you can do with a dry drainage channel that when waters are high, they shear off the road, go through those drainage channels, and you can direct them into something like this swale we're showing on the front edge of the berms. And then we can move that water to places where we can hold it to be treated properly by filtration and everything before it ends up in the river, but also use it on site to help water the vegetation that we would want to plant along this edge. Because this is one of the opportunities to create a more riparian environment, because the water table is less important if you can capture it off of the road and really keep it there. And so there's a lot of different ways we could look about doing that, but that's one of the ideas we have along this sort of front edge. And this is a cross section of that, so you kind of get a little bit of a better understanding of how that would be. And actually, we'll go back one more. This line here is that cross section. So you're looking to the left on this, but in cross section. So you have McCain Road on the left, the swale, the berm, and then the trail on the right-hand side before you get out into the meadow for the rest of the open space. And there's the image again of that drainage channel and what some of that riparian vegetation could potentially look like if we were able to get the water to sort of flow through those areas a little bit more regularly. A lot of yarrow, native grasses and things that will do well with a little bit of water, that kind of thing. This is one of my favorite feature areas. It's really colorful for sure on this graphic, but this is actually right where we had the overtopping of the river previously. So this is that main sort of centralized access area. And we love the idea of trying to use that overtopping area as a feature in a sense. It's sort of creating a separation between the open space and the river access area, doing a boardwalk over that to create a really cool interaction with that, and providing some interpretive signage on that bridge or adjacent to that bridge that could potentially help educate people on why this mitigation effort was done to ensure the river was flowing appropriately. But then number 6 here is just a giant wildflower meadow. And this is what we were talking about with the wildflower images we showed earlier. It's that we could create a really cool sort of native and non-native pollinator garden sort of in here, would bring back a lot of those pollinator species while also providing beach access off the trail edge as well. And this is another area where we would consider putting a gathering space, whether that's a shade structure or a shady picnic grove. Just sort of facilitating people staying in these areas and getting to interact with the space a little bit more. But this would be one of those spots where we would have controlled access to the river and access for fishing and stuff like that.
Couple of things I would add, where we show that structure in the landscape around it, that's another area where it's actually out of floodplain. So we can make some of these improvements without impacting the floodplain. The wildflower meadow we're showing is actually within the floodway of the river, so we don't want to do a lot of major improvements. So we thought a purely landscape approach here, for discovery play. The pollinator plants we put out there will bring the pollinator bugs, and there's nothing better for kids than to bring the bugs. And it's also an opportunity to begin reintroducing and trying to get biodiversity back into the open space. I don't think we could afford to plant wildflowers all over the entire space, but we can jumpstart nature. Because I think, Carrie, you already said that, we're seeing some of that nature moving its way back in. Even up along the, Sam just talked about up along McCain Road. That could be another area where we introduce some wildflowers just to start bringing that biodiversity back into the space, because there's not a lot of, we've got some grasses established, but there's only probably 4 or 5 species. Way to do that. So again, and then also we're trying to focus the landscape improvements along the river, where by the previous improvements is where they've done the liner underneath the river. So it's holding the water up. And so we want to put the landscape where they've already made that improvement as much as we can too, and then focus it in those areas around where we want to create these activity events.
How do the people who are fishing get there?
Fishermen do 2 things. Fly fishermen, and I'm a infrequent flyer fisherman, probably a lot more when I was younger than I am now and get out there, but they tend to, and then I think it was Tim who's with the Breckenridge Outfitter said, fly fishermen, they tend to walk in the river for the most part and move up and down the river. What we see about these opportunities to provide access on the point bank part of the river is that that's a great spot. In fact, I almost put a picture in here that I found this the other day of me up on Weston Pass with my daughters when they were 6'2", and engaging in that river. This is an easy spot. Those are easy spots to get to the water and shore fish. So we thought focusing that access in these areas would provide for that fishing. If it's dad brought his son out here and they can get to the water easily. They're not fly fishermen yet, but they can get to the water and fish. I think it provides that opportunity. And this particular plan, the overtopping channel that's there, that also kind of creates that limit of walking. We get people out there and they can access the water, but they won't move necessarily down the shore. Again, if we have the right cobblestones in the right place, it just gets tough to walk. And most people, if you make it cobbly, they're not going to walk there.
And
And so it kind of prevents.
between the two concepts, there are a different number of like suggested access points.
Yes,
to the river,
right.
correct?
Yeah, there's other places. We've shown these 3 areas. But yeah, ERO's map show there's other places too that we could provide, easy access on the east side of the river.
Is this whole area here shallow enough that kids simply will get in it and play no matter what we do?
The water edge, I think it's the edge where you can more easily get in because it's not been armored with cobbles like the cut banks we've done. And it's where, again, it's kind of a self-recovering edge because it's where sediment's being deposited as to eroded away.
Will
So,
that affect the fish, the number and quality of the fish if kids are
Um,
playing in there a lot?
I'd have to ask the fishing experts more about that. I tend to think not as much as if we were disturbing the cut banks, because most of the fish, they want to lay in the shadows of the cut bank, or there's been some other ripple improvements and things. Generally, the fish are in the deeper water on the opposite side of the river. And if you're fishing from shore or you're a fly fisherman, you're throwing your lure toward that cut bank. So I don't think it would be a problem.
Additionally, Shannon, the city engineer, when we were out on site with her, one spot on the site that she really recommended we focus any improvements to getting people down to the river access. This is one of the slower portions of the river, but it's also one of the more picturesque. This is where I'm blanking on the name of that channel that you can see in the very top there.
Oh, the other creek.
Yeah, where the creek ties into Blue River. You can see that pretty easily from right where I've drawn that view triangle at the top. So really, this is kind of the synthesis area where you can get a wide variety of users access to the river relatively easily. And all of these trails you're seeing that we have designed here would be designed to be accessible to anybody. There's no stairs intentionally. Transition areas would be treated appropriately as such as well, so that there's access to these places for everybody.
Even wheelchairs?
Is it soft surface in any case?
Yeah, all of these areas, for the most part, I would recommend, and we would recommend doing soft surface trails simply because they're in floodplain. So you're mitigating how much potential risk you have when floodwaters do occur. You're not washing out trails, you're not getting erosion, you're not getting upheaval, any of that sort of thing. So pretty much anywhere where you're out in floodplain or even in floodway, it's even more important. You want to minimize hard surface impacts. So these would all be soft surface trails. Yeah. And then the last one that we have is this picnic and play, which is kind of the tertiary third area between Vista Verde and the one we just looked at. This is another one of those opportunities to get really safe and easy river access. And in this location in particular, we're proposing larger boulders that have a level top to them that you could sink down far enough and get them out into the river a little bit further that you could just stand on it and throw your line right off the edge and fish. And because of the grade that we have here, we could transition down onto those boulders without creating much of an issue at all. And then I've got another kind of cool play feature, and this location, which is my number 4, this one's a little harder to see, but these are little fish made out of rocks. We could do a variety of different things, but rocks seem to be an organic material that you can sort of shape and put together in certain ways that really resemble other things, but we could do anything. I mean, we could do logs to resemble different animals or creatures or pieces. But just the thought, trying to incorporate as much of those things into as many places throughout this open space as possible has been really important to me personally, because I know that as a youth who would be out exploring with their family, every corner they're turning would be something exciting rather than it all being focused in one maybe specific play area. And it helps facilitate that understanding of getting out and exploring and like seeing what every part of this space has to offer. The other thing that you'll see on this plan, which is a really good example of a higher intensity improvement, would be this number 7 that's trailing off to the north. That's essentially a 2-foot, very narrow trail. And the intention behind this is almost like, let's build the social trail so they don't. The idea is that this could sort of come away from the river in the areas where we're on a cut bank and we don't want people next to the water. And in that case, we would do more of that sort of cobble burying or barriers and vegetation barriers and really intentionally force people away from the river. And then when we get back to the areas where we're a little safer, where we're on these inside corners of the river, we bring the trail back in so that we provide this sort of like sine curve of like being away from the water, being close to the water, being away from the water, being close to the water, but being very intentional about allowing them to be near the water where it's the safest and where it would be appropriate. And that is actually really well shown on the first concept, overall concept we showed you. And we can go back and I could show that to you if you want to see it a little bit more. But that is something that we probably wouldn't do or intensity plan, and that would just be for the purpose of trying to preserve that river edge and not even risk anyone being out there. But I like the idea because you could carry some vegetation across the entire trail that way, which would be nice. And then also just, I think that in my very, minimal experience, but I think that there's a reason for providing that trail because if they have a way to go, then there's no desire to go anywhere else. And you can kind of control it that way.
It's a big balancing act. That could be part of the management plan too. We could minimize the amount of trails, and if we see social trails evolving, we could then go in and add some of these improvements. I like to call them fences that aren't fences, right? Cobbles and planting. They serve the purpose of fencing off the area. And it also may very well be, there may be places where we simply have to temporarily put some actual temporary fencing in and sign it as a restoration area. So it's really a function of, do we build it now and try to manage it, or do we see what happens and have it be part of the longer term management plan?
But that is all of our concepts. We liked the idea of showcasing some of these feature areas at a larger scale because it's really difficult at the large 100 scale drawings to see how these intimate spaces would really play out. And so we didn't want to do one or the other. We wanted the opportunity to show you all of the ideas we had. So we thought this was the most concise way to do it, even if it doesn't feel so concise. So I apologize.
So one thing I might add before we leave this plan is where we show shade structure here. This is kind of the northernmost, kind of the three key feature areas. We could not do the shade structure there, and we could move that more intense development down to that very northern edge, very near to Vista Verde, where they could have more immediate access. And it doesn't play into the visual character of the space as much as it might in other areas. Again, where's the right level of intensity for the kind of users that.
Becky, do you want us to go? Do you want us to?
I think we should do questions first and then go around with the feedback. I do think we should endeavor to be a little concise, given we have two other agenda topics that could take some time. So maybe pick your most salient comments, but are there questions first?
I can start it off if that's all right. I think this would be for Laura. On phase one, did we get a statistically significant number of responses from phase one?
We did not design a statistically significant survey.
Okay.
And so that wasn't a goal. We received about, I think on the question regarding amenities combined between the open house and the survey, there were about 60 responses. And then on the survey alone was about 45. The exact numbers are in the engagement.
And are you looking for similar numbers for phase two, or are you hoping for more engagement and like higher?
I would hope that there are a little bit greater number. We definitely want to engage the broad community, and also that Vista Verde hosted meeting will feature the same information as the community meeting on Wednesday, but just give a more proximal opportunity for those neighbors to interact and provide comment and feedback on the concepts. But I think as far as the count goes, we would like to see that at least the same, if not more. So,
Great.
yeah.
And Craig, when you're looking at soft surface versus concrete, asphalt, whatever it might be, is there a trade-off from the cost of building it to the maintenance, as far as, obviously I would imagine pavement would be easier to maintain, but soft surface might be less expensive to to put down to
I think
create?
we'd need to think about the importance of pushing snow off of it in the wintertime or not. I know it can be a little more difficult. You can push snow off of a DG trail. You just may have some more repair work to do in the springtime. But I think that's probably from a maintenance viewpoint, the soft surface trails will need some periodic maintenance, and it's probably important if you feel like you need to plow it or not, kind of thing. We need to push snow off of it. But like the comparison of the two plans, if we didn't do the paved trail through that kind of western edge, there's still another paved route that can be plowed for winter, winter access and the like. So that's probably the biggest thing. You can, if we had high traffic areas but wanted to be soft, you can also do certain reinforcements to that DG. There's additive polymers and things you can do to make it more of a impervious surface or a solid surface. They're still pervious. They still can, water can still infiltrate, but it just makes it a little more solid surface if we need to do that in areas. Sometimes we also find that we get higher traffic impacts on them, and we may need to change it out to a harder paved surface. We're getting some, significant impact problems. Usually where trails merge and things like that, you might find that need to do some improvements.
Great. And then lastly, on the plans that you've put, there's a ton of vegetation. Do you see that with the land that we have to work with? Do you see getting vegetation to thrive in this area being a challenge?
I actually, from what I saw in terms of the willow sprigs, it doesn't surprise me given that it's we didn't have any permanent irrigation or even establishment irrigation. I think that the general rule of thumb I take for areas like that is better to plant more small things and probably has less survival rate, but the long-term impact and success is probably pretty strong. Again, the landscape we're proposing is to focus it around these feature areas and to put it where we already have that liner constructed by the river improvements so that we've got a little better hydric situation for the plants. And I think they'll do okay. Because it looks like some of the trees and things that are out there, and again, they take time. I think you'll be surprised in 3 or 4 years, those little willow sprigs will probably be pretty aggressively growing out there. I think overseeding with new, we could also bring some more diversity of grasses into the meadow and try to make that a healthier meadow environment. Again, that might bring some of the wildlife closer in if it's just a healthier meadow environment. But I think bringing some of the pollinator species out here can be pretty important too, because they will spread in time. It's one thing to try to do the whole acreage, but I think if we get things started, times that are advantage, and I think the long-term management, this space will mature a lot. It already has, even from early spring. Grasses are doing better.
Great, thank you.
So with that, you're saying without irrigation installed?
I think we try to do as much of this as we can without irrigation. Maybe along the McCain Road where we're making a more intensive landscape effort, we can get some drip irrigation for, establishment, or even some areas. I've done some reestablishment areas in the past where we've put a temporary big impact rotor out there and just temporarily throwing water on it to get the grasses established, get the seeds germinated when we can. But it's a wonderful, realignment and reconstruction of the river. I don't think there's any reason why we can't get the native vegetation performing very, pretty well out here. It takes time to reestablish them.
Other questions?
Question for staff. Have we thought about what we might do for winter recreation on this? Does this become part of the cross-country loop off the rec center? And then, if we were to do something like that and groom it as opposed to plow it, is there a preference in trail and surface area for that?
For grooming it, there wouldn't be a preference, on top of the snow. We haven't really decided or talked about whether plowing or grooming. Our initial thoughts probably we'd continue that grooming program. This could be a grooming alternative because we really don't plow the path any further down than
Right.
It's at Valley Brook Road, right past the rec
Maybe we
center.
could groom a
Yep.
loop and it's like a terminus loop on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Once
about
again,
a
we hadn't thought about winter stuff.
half-mile loop around kind of the main area, just to give you an idea of how much it is now. I used to do a lot more cross-country skiing when I was living in Flatland, Michigan. But half a mile is not a real long trip, a pair of skis. But if you're coming out here just to get a loop or two in before you go to work in the morning or whatever, it can be good.
What was that?
It would be this.
Like
That
in
kind
the
of
main
loop, that's
venue.
about, and then it's another, probably a quarter mile down to Vista Verde either route. So if you were walking from Vista Verde and came out and did a morning walking back, you're probably walking about a mile.
So, oh, are you done, Chris? I had a question related to that as well, and it also written down like a grooming trail in the winter. Because I don't know if you know, but we do groom the bike path, so we could add this into a Nordic experience pretty easily and kind of get off the beaten path a little bit more. So I think I think that'd be really exciting. Related, we had some folks come in, and I was wondering if you had a chance to look at, there was someone who talked about soft surface running opportunities. And so I'm just curious if that idea is incorporated into one of these. I didn't see, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want a track. But then, if we're gonna have a half-mile loop, I think it'd be interesting to consider being able to have that whole loop be soft surface as opposed to paved. Cause then I'm thinking about more urban parks like Wash Park and those sorts of parks where they do create a nice loop for soft surface walk. A lot more people are living there. There's about to be a lot more people working over there too. So it's a nice lunch loop. So I'm just thinking like if that was
We,
thought about in this process.
we received a letter with interest about cross-country running.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I can let you all speak to this a little more, but I feel like that's where the paved with a soft surface trail comes in because it gives that soft surface connectivity and like greater distances for that throughout the space while still
Hard access.
preserving the paved access for
Mhm.
others.
And so I guess a follow-up question is in either of these, in both of these options, there seems to be a pavement option that goes all the way through. And I'm just wondering why. I just hadn't, it had not crossed my mind to have any part of this paved. So I'm not totally opposed. I'm just curious why that's a given in both of these plans.
Well, it's probably not a given, and that wasn't my intent, but it probably just because Vista Verde, that trail has been completed right up to that end that.
Wait,
it
can you
seems like
show
we
where
wanna-
it has? I actually don't
Right
know.
here is where.
Yeah, it's
ends.
concrete to there. Now, the second example just returns that down to McCain Road and all the rest of the trails are soft surface in the open space. You're right. I've lived there at Washington Park in the neighborhood since before they built that DD trail. So a long, long time. Very heavily used, very popular.
Yeah.
And that's in addition, but that's a park that gets, I can tell you on a Sunday afternoon, last Sunday, there were 30,000 people in the park.
It also kind of loops back to that relief question on the rec path, the conflict between fast cyclists, more casual cyclists, pedestrians and
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
users.
I think this gets back to my very first question is if we do end up having the no realignment and the bike path is still there, and then we also have McCain, and then we also have a pavement, to me, it feels like overkill. Because I don't think that many people who are using the bike path are going to pivot and go into the open space unless we make it very obvious for them to, and I don't know if we want that or not. I'm thinking like e-bikes and everything, then the cyclists are gonna use McCain Road, and then we have this like third option for pavement, and I'm just not sure that it's necessary. But I think that's just a thing we should consider, whether we need a paved option at all in there. But again, I don't know what's gonna happen with the bike path, so it's really hard to make that comment.
I was gonna say, certainly in that context, like if that were to be the case, that those were the series of events that unfolded, our recommendation would probably also. be on
Yeah.
that page for-
I think-
Through the open space.
Yeah,
Every opportunity to not add another square foot of concrete or asphalt to the world is a good thing.
that's kind of what I
That
figured
kind of-
you'd say. Okay, I have
I would
one.
be okay with everything being soft surface trail.
Yeah.
That's just my personal.
Well, I think that's something we would want to consider too. The final question I have, sorry, I'm just trying to get through them all real quick. I don't know how much you've learned, but we've it sounds like there's going to be a pretty significant skier parking lot in that area. And so really excited to hear your ideas about the berms and trying to, you know, create some separation between those two. And from your environmental expertise, I'm just curious if you're concerned at all about having that much traffic so close to this open space, or if the berms and some of the waterways that you've created are gonna be successful at kind of mitigating some of that pollution. I don't know about pollution is the right word, but it's like a lot of traffic, parking traffic.
Exhaust.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Nature Valley granola bar wrappers.
Yeah, nature behind, you know, urine.
If there's 500 I'm just gonna go through a little traffic planning in my head. If there's 500 parking spots there, but they're just skiers coming in once and leaving when they're done, that's 1,000 vehicle trips. That's about the top end of a local street volume is about 1,000. So you'd be adding that local street volume to what's already out there.
Yeah.
So I think most people probably go out to the roundabout. I'm not sure how much traffic you get yet on that road, but
And when it
it's a
comes,
meaningful addition, but not a giant addition of traffic.
comes to seasonal uses as well, that I alluded to the comment of concerns around like excess parking in the residential areas where it's already limited. On the flip side, the skier parking, that if it could be used seasonally for open space access, it can alleviate that pressure or concern from the community there.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna ask, if that's a possibility to think about that skier parking for our usage in the summer. Okay, that's it.
All right, let's be,
Could I ask you all one
Yes.
question very quickly? I just wanted to get a sense from you all about that river access differentiation between concepts 1 and 2, because fishing access is it's a very high interest for the space, and also probably going to be the greatest like recreation conservation balance pressure here. And so if you had any kind of inclinations towards, Sam, could you go back to concept 1? So you can see the yellow, like kind of loop, like
Mm-hmm.
looping, like kind of managing for where social trails may develop. Maybe it's something for you all to think on and get back to us later, but.
Well placed in the river on the, I definitely fly fish quite a bit. You know, most people that are going to actually fly fish, they're probably wearing waders, you know, so having minimal access points doesn't really minimize their experience. And actually, I love that you guys were talking about building, you know, kind of some natural vegetation barriers, because that's kind of what you're looking for in fly fishing. You know, you get into the water, you work your way up river, but if you're not having interactions with everybody along the banks on your way up, that's actually a positive. So as I was kind of conceptualizing that and picturing myself fishing it, that was actually a big plus, as
Those are
opposed to
the
having a
people that
lot
are
of.
spooking the fish you're trying to get.
Right, exactly. You know, you want to give everybody access to the river, but if it's minimized a little bit, I don't think that doesn't dissuade the fishermen from finding their way in.
Is
So,
that the second one?
yeah.
Christina?
Concept 2.
do you want to kick us off with feedback?
Sure. How many ways can I say I love this? Concept 2 for me, for sure. You know, I think there are pieces of concept 1 that might kind of overlay into it. Like some of the structures might actually be interesting and beneficial into an overlay of concept 2, but I love the soft surface trails in concept 2. I love the inclusion of the rock walls that you guys picked up on, especially after those of us that lived through the construction of that roundabout. Let's get something good out of that. Yeah, remember that? God. Yeah, there's not too much negative that I pulled out of this. You know, I think that there's going to be even more feedback as you guys reach out, and I think you're going to continue to hear more and more from the community. But I think this is the kind of build that most in our community would see what's there and not lament what they didn't get out of it. You know, especially, you know, as we kind of talked about like the play areas, to do that as natural structures. You're again speaking my love language, instead of a playground or something like that out there on this parcel. The other thing that I absolutely loved that I'd like to put up there for consideration, I've already started lobbying on this one, but I loved El Prado as the replacement name for McCain. I think that
Ah.
that works on so many levels. El Prado Preserve or El Prado Sanctuary, something like that. It talks to the inclusivity of the space and some of the other community members that we have that aren't always represented here. Yeah, and as far as the bike path connectivity and stuff like that, I think a lot of that's TBD, but I think that this works as a standalone that will support whatever solution we come up with on the higher traffic bike paths. But it doesn't, I don't think it has to, this doesn't have to solve for that. I think this can operate as a nice preserve and a nice open space, but it's not our answer for the bike path traffic. That's a standalone argument. And after we walked it, to Bobby's point, it felt a lot smaller when we got out there and walked it, and we did have concerns about the parking. Seeing this, I'm a little less concerned about some seasonal parking, especially if that's not a long-term solution. I think we can work around that, especially if that's just winter parking. When we're really talking about it, we're putting cars out there in the wintertime, not in the summer. So how's that?
Great.
I loved it. And thank you for the book. It's a little bit of a tough read, but I'm getting through it, the Braiding Sweetgrass.
Hints in it, but
Yeah.
good. You'll wait till you get to the end of it.
Okay, working on it.
I liked it too. I really liked the play opportunities that you came up with that aren't jungle gyms and swing sets. I mean, that is what an open space really needs, I think, to get the kids, having them have some focus that really speaks to them, but tricks them into playing outdoors without phones and swings and merry-go-rounds and things. So I love that part of it. And I hope we can work in that subtly through this thing. So it's not just like a big sign playground.
I hear.
I did like that. And as far as the trails within it, I really also am much more interested in soft surface than hard. I think that helps keep it an open space feel. And I didn't know if we're going to be able to accommodate what the high school wanted for a training track. Does it need to be a straight
No.
open? It can,
But the request was 3 meters wide
and that's
to accommodate, and that is, say again,
the 19.
Yeah, 3 meters.
10,
Roughly.
10 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean,
did,
that was the ideal request. He didn't matter if it was sort of circuitous in nature, but I think the width is important for what they specifically are
They
trying
run
to
in big
do.
groups, right?
Yes.
They need room to spread out and not be so congested, which makes sense.
Do you have like a total trail distance estimate
No,
here?
We
can
could
work
Pull
on that.
that
We can
easy.
work on that pretty.
I'm just
This
curious,
is
like,
about a half a mile around that loop. Now, they have a lot of cross-country events in Wash Park, right where I live. And the possibility could be that we could improve the inside of the trail to manage the grass and make it a better running grass surface, work the cobbles out of it along the edge of the trail where it could be actually grasses they can run on. But when they're not having cross-country events, it's just the meadow. So damn, I think that could be, so we don't have to create 3 meters of a, crusher fine trail. We could create a grass running surface by just working some of the stones out and giving it a little better grass surface along the loop trail.
And I also like the picnic areas, but I think the idea of shade trees for a picnic is also very consistent with our concept of an open space. They get to use it, but it doesn't look like a fairground. I thought you did an amazing job.
You think of Jay?
Echo the same thing on the discovery play and as well as the natural shade structures versus kind of a built up straight shade structure. Wildflower area was super cool. I can definitely see that being an attraction, something that the town can use to for great pictures and whatever it
The
is.
Kodak moment.
That's right, yeah. And option 2 just speaks to me very much. So I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it. I feel like you guys really kind of have extracted what we were looking for out of this process so far.
What do you think of David?
I echo everything that everybody said so far. I like option 2. I think this is you guys did such a nice visual, collection, just showing real life photos from projects. And I think it really gives the public an opportunity to see what it's going to look like. you know, somebody who lives on a former dredge pile, this is gonna require an enormous amount of soil and water and upkeep. And I think it looked to staff, this is not once a week, this is daily, and it's daily watering. And whether it's, you know, putting off the baskets for a year and using those trucks to, you know, get those trees. Oh, yeah, you can. But you know, having mature trees and giving them an opportunity, I think we have a lot of projects that whether, you know, not necessarily in Breck, but just all over the county where we've tried to build up landscape, and you can find them. There's where there's an aspen with one branch left, and it just, in my neighborhood, they tried it with a tiny parcel. And they watered it, and it watered every day, and then they decided to stop watering it. It is dead again. And it is really, the soil just isn't, that's hard rock. And so, yeah, I think it's beautiful if you can do it. And if there's a plan to upkeep it and budget to match, it will be amazing, but it will take some work.
What would you think about if we brought some non-native, more upland species of trees out here to get the shade?
Well, I wouldn't touch that. I mean, I'm not gonna touch that. That's people smarter than I am. I wouldn't want to say that, and then suddenly we have an invasive tree.
I guess it's a question of what's like we are not in a hospitable environment for deciduous trees. I mean, only a few grow here at best. So even your illustrations are stunning, but I think about the diversity of what our trees, what we can sustain here, and there's just not that much. I mean, aspen, maybe poplar, maybe cottonwood, but other than that, it's all.
No, you're right,
evergreen.
absolutely. And narrowleaf cottonwoods are, you know, they're pretty common street trees in town, and they can be pretty good performers. I think we may need to, I don't think you have to put permanent irrigation in. It's also thinking, going back to what used to be more traditional practices of the landscape industry. It's what time of the year are you making these installations? The industry, at least down in the Front Range, has gotten to where, well, we have irrigation, we can put stuff in anytime we want. And you know what? No, you can't, even down there. Because what happens when you water, you're just training those plants to expect water. And when you turn it off, it doesn't matter how great they've done, they will pass.
I would just test the soils, because those.
Patience about the process and success and planting at the right times of year and those kind of things that we can do.
We do have fields of wildflowers in the area, so they can live. It just may need some amendment, but
It really comes down to selection of species. And I think really, I know with these diagrams, it's kind of hard to see what species we're going, but really conceptually, my idea behind a lot of what trees we might have out here are aspen, narrowleaf cottonwood, you know, the pine and spruce species that you do have in town that do okay. Namely, if you look at that berm between the rec path and Highway 9, what's growing on that is what we would try to grow out here. Because if it can grow on that, it can grow out here.
It's growing on a rock
So
pile.
that's kind of the idea, is working with ERO, we would like to sort of develop a plant palette recommendation list that would be in the report that we put together towards the end of this process, so that you have an understanding as to what will have the best chances of survival in these places. But it's going to be predominantly like local native species that you're all very well familiar with, because we agree, you know, being up this high elevation, you are very limited in what you can and can't grow, so.
Yeah, and it's that plus on top of a rock mining field, so it's even worse
With
than
no water.
some of the wildflower fields we see are on some undisturbed land. They're not on our cobblestone.
That's why we focus where we show, as you can see on this overall plan, it looks like we've planted a lot on the enlargement, but we've really only identified 3 or 4 areas along the whole river where we want to
Mhm.
plant.
Yeah.
Make our efforts count there.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could, you know, shade structures versus shade trees. We could also design some very subtle, almost can't see them shade structures if we needed more immediate shade. There'd be ways we could do that. They don't have to look like a traditional shade structure you'd put in a more urban park. We can find ways to create very nominal pieces of architecture, I guess I'd say, and create some shade.
That's it. Okay. A lot of what I was gonna say has been said. I love it. Thank you guys so much. I think this is gonna be one of those things that us and BOSAC will be really proud to have been a part of. It's probably going to be one of our kind of pinnacle things. And so I think being able to watch this from beginning to end and hopefully be an integral part of it is really exciting. So really appreciate what you guys have put together. I think it's amazing. Love the discovery play. I love all of your ideas. I think incorporating some of the play with also some meandering trails to kind of spark some exploration too would be really exciting, which could be similar to some of the, non-social social trails that you did, like kind of like,
Eventually lead them to these.
yeah, exactly. And have it be discovery play / exploration, what's around this next corner. So I think that's really exciting. Also definitely in favor of, least amount of pavement as possible. And I've said it a lot of times now, like just depends on what we do with the bike path, but, I would prefer to not push people that are just looking to use pavement into this space, as long as we can keep, some, really flat surfaces accessible to all users. One thing that I think we could really, was in one of your examples is the amphitheater stone. I don't know if we have enough elevation in any of these places for that, but I would love that because that's been something I've thought of ever since the beginning. There's a park in Aspen that has that, and it's kind of like unexpected. It's not an official amphitheater, but you come around a corner and there's like a natural gathering point that is stone. And I think it could be a really good opportunity to collaborate with Breck Create. And you're here at a great time. It's the International Festival of the Arts. That would be an amazing place to have an art installation that's really low impact. We always are struggling to find places in our trail system where we want to send a lot of people to look at art. So it could be like a little mini amphitheater for an art installation or for music. And so I think that I just wanted to elevate because I saw a picture of that in there and I really like that idea. I also don't think, you're the expert, and I think if we do a shade structure, you can make it look as environmentally appropriate as possible, but it's not a priority for me in this. I think that we don't get too many 90-degree days, so I think having natural shade is preferable. I think just keeping this as wild as possible is always going to be my preference, but I won't
Well, and as a landscape architect, I always have to remind myself that, we're building this place for 40 years from now too, and not
Yeah.
just next year.
Yeah, exactly.
The trees will grow.
The trees will grow. And yeah, and I think I already mentioned the berms between the parking lot and opportunities to potentially utilize some of that parking. I think the parking is a key challenge that I think we'll have to really think through, but we have a parking lot now, so maybe we can utilize it. All right, that's everything. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for your patience. We took a bunch of your time, but this is really fun.
It's my favorite topic on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'll chime in really quick. This was great. You did a really nice job. Craig, my dad was a landscape architect, so the colored pencil is like
My
hitting
dad
the
did.
card. Yes.
I'm still one of those old guys that can.
Yep.
Identification was a large part of my childhood. Yes. I have like a few different takes on some of this. One piece is on the play. I love the play. I have 2 little kids, love it, but it was only 6.6% of what was identified as amenity interest. So it seemed like there was a lot of focus on that. I just want to make sure that's consistent with the feedback we get from the public. Another thought I know it seems like everyone's opposed to a paved path, but I do think about accessibility, which has been a moving target for this commission. How do we address accessibility? We've built trails. We don't know if they're being used. They're crusher fine. My head just goes to, could this be a place where we really lean into accessibility because it's flat? It's like one of the only flat places. So I think it might be a good opportunity for that. I don't know, but I don't want to rule that out. It makes me think you should maybe it's worth talking to the Social Equity Commission, maybe explore that with council, but I just want to point out that view on that. Say again?
Boardwalk, a trail that's a boardwalk that would be
Yeah, I just wonder, I don't know, I mean, I've talked to a few people about crusher fine being difficult, even though it's, I think technically ADA, it still can be really difficult for some people, so.
To push in a stroller and things.
Yeah,
like that.
strollers,
Considering
even strollers is a good
it
point.
is more challenging.
Yeah,
And it may be that we just have to pick certain locations where we, like at the south end, if we put a straight shade structure and have a directional kiosk and things like that. Maybe we pave to that, or maybe we give a better surface to the viewing blind, but not through the whole project, so that people, they can get out and into the space, but it doesn't have to be all of the trail.
sure. Yeah, I think that's great. The shade, just back to the shade thing, that was identified 9.5% wanted shade. So I think I wouldn't totally toss that out. I do think shade trees might be ambitious, back to our tree conversation. Just thinking how long it would take for a tree to mature enough to provide shade is probably 10, 20 years from now. I think maybe a narrow leaf cottonwood would thrive, but it needs so much water. And I just think of what David, I mean, the whole time you were giving the presentation, my head just went to maintenance. Like, I completely echo David's concerns, like who's going to do that? How are we going to manage this? It's stunning, but I do have concerns about that, the management piece with water and upkeep, even just maintaining a wildflower meadow. I don't know if you have to work at that to pick ones that are more invasive or more take over. I just don't know enough
You would
about it.
pick
But
predominantly natives that you would find, if this was the natural condition that you'd find out there. Again, it goes back to, again, as an industry, when we want shade, well, we think we got to put 4-inch caliper trees in. And it's a function of the time continuum. In a place like this, I would focus more on smaller plantings that have a better survivability rate and be more patient with it. But again, maybe it means we provide some temporary shade structure.
yeah, exactly. These are just thoughts I had. I mean, maybe we would need structures initially and then could maybe
Take
even
them past
need
the
them in
trees and
10 years. Yeah, exactly. I think that was everything. I just do want to echo, and I said this last time, but just maintaining focus on the winter use and not losing sight of that. It's so easy to do that. So that was everything I had. Does anyone have any last lingering? Is there anything else we could provide?
Wow, this has all been great,
feedback.
fantastic input.
You've done such a nice, all of you have done a great job. It's really impressive.
It's been very fun.
Yes.
Would like to echo what Nikki said, is trying to find like at least one touch point that we could make ADA compatible. I know you mentioned it is difficult through the floodplain and the floodway, but if there is a way to provide, I think, one point of access, I think that would go a long way.
I think we can do that. That shouldn't be a
We could probably
problem.
provide more than one.
It doesn't have to be all, but I just think providing this is an opportunity that we have, and I'd hate to lose that opportunity.
And combined with where we think people are gonna park.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, we're flat here, except there, and it's not even flat. It's just sort of flat.
50 feet from south to north, that's the difference in height. So across that whole length, you're only going down 50 feet.
Pretty good.
It does have to be the flattest place.
Yeah, it
in the world.
really does. It's like, that's it.
Like in that meadow area, like where there's highlighted for that kind of like boardwalk and structure piece or like viewing piece, you can see so many of the peaks.
It's
Mm.
awesome.
Get that kind of view. You usually have to go pretty far, like into.
And that would be great for the ADA accessibility. Yeah.
Why I was thinking that overlook area in the middle is probably the spot that I would want to focus on, because that's the one in the middle, 360-degree views. It's also close to the edge. We could find a way to connect through there without having to go around either side, I think. So we'll look at opportunities like that for sure.
And it's nice for the Nordic piece too, or just a walking loop for local folks in the winter. So yeah, our neighbor.
Good stuff.
Alright. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Luck with the open house.
See you again soon.
All right, so we'll move to Ranch at Breckenridge.
Great. Ranch at Breck. Okay. We can pull up the map here in a second, but just overview. You'll remember we discussed this in March, and they were preliminary concept trail ideas, and BOSAC was supportive, but, we had to flesh out the exact alignments, and there's a little bit of concern. Thanks, Tony. On the section of trail that goes from Sally Barber Mine south and crosses Australia Gulch, just maybe that sensitive habitat that we want to be careful of. And so we kind of went back and did some work. Tony was involved in figuring out exact alignments and tried to, let me wait till the map pulls up.
Sorry.
No, thank you, Tony. Great. Thanks, Tony. So here is the section that you had expressed concern over. And then, so part of this alignment design is to stay away from this area a little more with this section of the two trails. And then as an overview, if it didn't make sense in the packet, this teal loop is one trail, and it would be multi-use, multi-directional. The big benefit is it takes traffic, avoids the steep pitch of Sally Barber Road coming south of the mine. And then this pink dotted line that starts here and has a little spur here and then goes up to True Romance, that's a second trail. And so when we looked harder at this and we factored in the fact that Spiral Stairs is hiking only, we thought this would be a good opportunity to have a additional hiking only extension, maybe making a loop up here or also a shorter loop down here. And we thought making it hiking only from this junction point would discourage user conflict up here. So we worked with Summit County staff and came up with these proposed ideas. We made sure that the Ranch at Breck developer was okay with them, which they were, and figured out pricing, which is in the packet, but it's 80 grand for both trails, 35 grand for just the hiking one. And we built by Higher Ground Earthworks and machine built, a contractor we trust. That county did an RFP for this. So we feel good about that. And just a little bit of detail is that the hiking trail was going to have a narrow corridor because hikers don't need as wide a trail tread. Therefore, it's cheaper. So that's why the longer trail doesn't cost as much. We also got CPW to weigh in, and they recommended just the pink. So if we did just the pink, we probably wouldn't do this little connection to nowhere, because they're concerned about this being elk habitat. And one last piece that we learned is that the county put in a wildlife camera, we think in the fall. Okay. So, and they caught very little wildlife in there, but maybe the camera was in the wrong place. We don't know. It's just another data point. They didn't capture any elk. So those are the options. OSAC discussed this last week. They voted unanimously to pursue this. One of the real compelling points was made by Peter Grosich, who basically said, the town was leading it and the county was going to support trying to purchase all this in 2019, 2020. And our plan was to build these trails, and it's a high recreation area. And now we can still build these trails, and we want to move forward with this. Winter use was brought up. This is a popular area for winter recreation. So this would improve circulation in the winter and provide more options. It could prevent user conflict in the summer, and having hiking only is a nice addition to our trail network. We're trying to take advantage of those opportunities. So they voted to build both trails, but we need to see how you all feel about this. And if we want to move forward, we could potentially start this fall, and it would need to be done by next fall. That's all I had. We did go through the decision-making framework table, which we can talk about into the details more, but I think I'd like to just turn it over to you, Nikki, to get your feedback on what you guys think about these trail options.
You want to have a question?
The biking trail, it'd be built up to be true multi-use, like not, wouldn't have any flow feature or anything like that. Because there's a pitch, but like, seems like there's kind of some elevation to go flat initially.
Yeah, I think as we grow as a program, we've kind of learned our lesson to, if it's multi-use.
6 feet.
No features.
Kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Something I forgot to point out is that, it's a pretty long hike if you parked here and you wanted to go all the way up to True Romance and then over to Nightmare and back down all this. I think we would have a bunch of mixed use here. You could do a shorter hike where you went up I would prefer to go up spiral stairs. It's kind of steep. And Nikki did provide some pictures if anyone would like to see spiral stairs photographs. Anyway, this would be a shorter option, and this would be a bunch of hiking and biking shared use here to make a shorter hiking loop.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm a frequent flyer of this area and maybe I'll love it. I'm not opposed, but I'm just kind of curious, like what the original intent of the multi-use loop is. I guess, I don't know. I know it's like to avoid the steep uphill. It is pretty brutal, walking or biking. It does also make it a lot longer of a loop. So I'm just curious, like I don't even know who this is a question for, like what we think that use is gonna really be. It just seems like a long cut to get to the exact same place. And maybe that's lovely.
Long ladder, short slide.
Long ladder, short slide. And that is true. But not a lot of people, I mean, I don't know.
It's a good
I'm
question.
not opposed. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know who's gonna use it.
Not saying that anybody did this yesterday, but if somebody were to have gone and kind of scouted out what this felt like.
Yeah,
One
would find.
would find, that it's more experiential. Like it was an extension of coming off of, the Nightmare feel, the single track and not jumping onto that road. It was nice to kind of have that
Yeah.
extend both directions. So like you come off the,
Instead of doing like.
instead of doing the baby head straight shot
Yeah,
down the hill to the jumps.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
And I think on uphill too, because like that's such an uphill grind.
Yeah.
I think this would be a lot nicer Peter Joyce experience to walk up this hill as opposed to going up straight up that road that we see him going up all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
So where the cursor is, this little sliver we own. So any elevation that we could lose in this section, we would take advantage of to,
Yeah,
extend the single track adjacent to the road there, because that's steep too.
And I guess the idea is if we think of this as a hiking only opportunity all the way up to True Romance and bikers will probably, they still have Nightmare opportunity to get to the same place, right? So there won't be too much concern that they're missing out on something.
I don't think so.
I had a question. I think I hiked spiral stairs yesterday, and I think being there in person, I hadn't done it in a long time. I forgot how residential that area really is. I mean, you're like, especially the part breaking off Sally Barber. I realize it really serves that neighborhood. How many people are permanently there? Hard to say, but I just want to make sure is that staff's impression that's more like serving that contingent of people, or do you not get that sense about it?
I feel like this lower part, it feels pretty woodsy. And it's not till you get near the road and you have a few houses, but then you do cross the road and then you're going to be on the road up here. So I think it's, I would say it's mixed, but I don't know. I have a history of going up this trail and I've enjoyed it. And maybe it's because nobody's ever in the houses, but there are a couple sections where you're close to houses, but otherwise you feel pretty removed from everything is my experience.
Mine was the opposite, but
Yeah, I think currently as it stands right now, it's the neighborhood trail, right?
Yeah.
Because for different user, it kind of just dead ends on the road. So it's like, where do I go from here? But with the new trail put in, maybe that offers that through access to other trails. So,
yeah. I was just thinking about who's going to be using it,
yeah.
more or less. And that new road, the new ranch road, I just curious how that'll change it too. Do we just want to dive in and? David, why don't you kick us off?
On this,
Yeah.
I think it's fun. I'm not gonna belabor this. We've already talked about it. I think it's a nice trail for hikers, and I think it's a good way, like Chris said, to be experiential, more experiential than the baby head, so. That is all I have. Do you want me to talk a little bit more?
I
about
mean, no.
roads and lights and people?
No.
Yeah.
Kristen, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. I support the whole thing and would hope that it seems like we are keeping in mind that for winter use, that the gradient for this is doable on skis
Yeah.
or other things, snowshoes.
I'm gonna deviate from my going last and have to go. So,
Okay.
Thoughts?
Okay, please.
I really don't like the connector to the mine. I don't think we need it. I would completely cut that section out.
What part is that?
The long part that,
Right here?
that part, I would just take, I don't get it. I don't want it. It does disrupt the habitat. On our conservation guidelines, we have, with conservation specifically, we have 4 no's. We have CPW saying it's disruptive to the wildlife habitat. I go on that power line section, I always see wildlife in there. And then now we have 5 different trails breaking off from the mine. It just seems like too dense and we don't need it. I think you could do the connector up, so the wiggly green up, and do the rest of it, but I'm like adamantly against that section.
Where does the trail end up going then?
Could it connect to that first switchback on Nightmare?
Would you change everything else to multi-use?
Yeah, what would you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, because
and then maybe this would be hiking only, Nikki?
actually, I mean, I don't want to go against, I know OSAC was excited about hiking only and I want to be conscientious of their thoughts. But I just think, I'm not sure how to handle the use piece. I wouldn't follow my sword on that, but that segment, I just do not think we need. It's so dense.
Good point.
And Nikki, the one thing I thought of regarding that was perhaps if you did continue that so bikers could use it upper part, it's uphill only for bikers. Because then they've still got options like Nightmare to go back down.
It's a great idea. That's a good way to solve that.
So how much of it would end up being hiking only? Any of it?
No, but you'd only have uphill bike traffic, so you wouldn't have to worry about downhill bikers.
Yeah, Bobby, I think in that scenario, call it option 3. This would be hiking only here, and then here's where you'd have joint use with uphill biking.
Well, I've been run over nearly by uphill bikers too, so.
I said sorry.
House.
All right, I said my piece. Chris, you want to go?
To your point, it does seem like it's a little bit of an overload of kind of just that one hub of the spoke right there, hub of the wheel. But yeah, when I was on there yesterday, if the road wasn't there, it'd be a great connector, you know, because that road's never been great. Obviously, it's always been kind of our main connector, but I love it as an option to get off of that part of Sally Barber Road for all users. So I'm still in support of all of it as presented.
Does it bother you that 4 out of 5 of our conservation specs are no's? So I'm feeling feisty, Tony.
I'm no pro. That doesn't lend itself to be heavy elk habitat or corridor. Probably some deer in there, but I don't know.
What if they identified it as an area? CPW.
I don't know. But thanks.
Sure.
Well, I was really excited by that long a piece of hiking only, so I'm happy with that. If we could find a way to take out the piece that's going through the elk habitat and still have a loop for bikers that doesn't take off 90% of the hiking only trail, then I'd be happy to, but
I mean, you could potentially make it all hiking only. I guess that's another
That
option.
would be fine.
But I don't know.
For me.
Yeah.
And my friends, that would be lovely.
And take off the middle connection
Yeah,
piece.
yeah.
I would be opposed to that because I do think the one real benefit of the blue section is that uphill bikers get to go up that section and not have to go up that steep last bit. So if that was only hiking, then we're not really, it's a nice hiking only option, but we're not solving the initial problem of why we wanted that blue thing in the first place.
Jay, what are you thinking?
Tony, I would love to hear some more backstory because I was in your camp where I was going, I don't understand what the purpose, it seemed like a recreational loop. But if you're, can you provide any backstory on this?
You know, I wish I had a little more information for you, Jay. I think when we originally were looking at this connection, we were trying to make that dream connection and bypass Sally Barber Road the whole way. And I think if like Catherine corrects me wrong, Spiral Staircase at one point was a multi-use trail. And when we were envisioning this, we were envisioning that using Spiral Staircase, connecting you down lower on Sally Barber. The last homeowner came in on Spiral Staircase and said, you know, if you want an easement across my property, it's going to be hiking only. So that, I think that kind of changed a little bit of the dynamics of the system when we originally envisioned it. And I go back and forth about that, avoiding that section of road as a user, because I think the section even below that is a kick in the pants too, you know? And so by the time you get to that last part, I think it even seems harder than it is because you just climbed up this other steep loose section. And so what's one more little bit of steep road? You've already gone that far. Do we need to have that much disturbance? And I do think, yes, that provides connectivity. I think it provides opportunities for loop in there, Jay. Hiking only, I have loved the idea of hiking only. Do I think this is the best spot for hiking only? I don't know. I feel like this could be a multi-use trail with limited user groups on it, with limited user conflict. I think we would design it in a way that would be beneficial for both winter and summer use, so we wouldn't have big steep pitches or grades in that. I kind of like Mark's suggestion about maybe it's just uphill climbing because then it's a little bit of both and there is some connectivity and looping. So I just threw a bunch at you with no.
Tony, what do you think the value is of the spur to the mine?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of value in
Yeah,
it.
what part?
The middle connection part, I don't. It's
Understand.
yeah,
That, Nick,
it's beautiful in there. It does cross over a beautiful little wetland area. It, like Chris says, yes, it provides a cool experience and an added, you know, journey and experience in the woods, but is the disturbance worth it? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's something we do later. Like, I think that was initial conversation of like, hey, let's maybe build the connection up to the hiking trail, leave that middle portion off, and we kind of wait and see.
We only have one bite at the apple, right? On this with the developer.
I think
Sure.
we have the right to these trails and we can do when we want.
Actually, like, I'd love to know more about what was the town's vision acquiring this whole property? And what were the trail connections that were, you know, it was a big ticket item. I mean, how can we accomplish whatever that goal was? If it is a bit, it doesn't.
And I think that would be my official stance is I would love for staff to take this back and kind of dig a little bit deeper, work with county open space and think this through a little bit, flush this out a little bit more and see if there was a way to kind of rectify that, you know, what CPW said versus what the cameras showed and what is the original intent? Does that intent still make sense today? And I would love to see a second presentation on this.
The one thing I just wanted to mention was, Duke pointed out that loop, the lower loop on spiral stairs up across, yeah, thank you, and then back down. That is probably where 90% of the hikers would, that'd be the extent of their hike. To go up the higher part is gonna be a real long hike. Not that some people won't do it, but anyway, that's one of the reasons I thought it might make sense to consider uphill anyway for biking, because I don't think there's going to be even many hikers up in the upper part.
I agree. And also, this is a hiking only trail in between a bunch of biking trails. So like you can't do this hiking only trail without being on a biking trail. So I'm just not sure if this is like the best place for a hiking. I get that the property owner has that contingency for the lower part of spiral staircase. But I think for the rest of it, I really am actually might change my mind that I do think the uphill biking, multi-use the whole way makes more sense because yeah, you get to True Romance, there's a ton of bikes. You get back down to the road, there's a ton of bikes. Like it just doesn't, I feel like bikers would be frustrated to be like, why is this a hiking only trail in between two biking trails? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that feedback.
Yeah.
No, I don't, what can we help? How can, I mean, I hear what Jay's saying.
Never written up it, no.
You know, I hear what you're saying, Jay, too, and I feel like we've kind of already gone back with the county and done this, kind of rehashed this out a little bit, and
Objective of buying Ridge, correct?
Mhm. And this was part of it. I remember Scott going into the meeting and was like, hey, we'll give you some bones. And he kind of drew these connections in. It was, you know, but I don't know if there was a deeper dive.
Yeah, it's hard to, I don't really know where to go next with this. First of all, just so I'm clear, Kristen and Nikki, you guys want the uphill only biking and hiking only, but not the connection to Sally Barber Mine across Australia
I'm
Gulch.
trying to win everyone over on that, but maybe I might be.
Because-
off
Well,
by now.
basically, I'm trying to wrap my head around where everybody stands. That's option 3. I'm just gonna call it
Yeah.
that. And that's how I'm describing that correctly,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Which is what? The blue switchbacks include, and
Build
then.
this, but don't build this.
Mhm.
Build this and then everything in pink, and this would be uphill biking only. And this would be hiking only. Is that correct?
Yes.
I guess I would say I'm fine with that or my original statement. I'm not opposed to just approving this. But I am compelled by that as well.
You guys as a group feel like we need to, no matter what, is gonna have to go back to OSAC and that's fine. We just gotta work through this and let's do it right. But I think, are you looking for, as a group, for us to try to come up with a refined new proposal and you don't feel good enough about this to move forward with any of the proposed options now? Or do you want to build some of it and then revisit? I mean, we can go on your direction. We don't have clear direction.
Yeah. I mean, we could just vote on it I don't know if we needed to do that, but maybe that's just the easiest. I do think there's also the option of phasing that connector that's like another.
Right. Right, that's what I was gonna say, is we could propose that, again, we would need OSAC to approve this revised plan, but we could do the option 3, and then this is just not built, and someday we could do it later, or never.
I mean, I just in the broader picture, I think this, to Catherine's point, really speaks to having like a master trail plan that we have to know where we're going in this full scheme of the system. Because I feel like we're piecemealing things and we don't know why.
Mhm.
So I just really echo what Catherine's saying. I know that's a different project, but I do find myself wondering, like, what are we trying to do here? And it's hard to answer that without the broader context.
I do think these, though, generally reflect, if I'm not mistaken, the easements that were given in the project with a little bit of room. Yeah.
You know, and I don't think we really had
they were
like
careful.
specifics. It was like initially, let's
We're just
get
trying to get the dirt.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly it was prevent development and
Mhm.
view sheds and value there.
But just to clarify, there's a plan, a PUD, right, approved for this area. And there's easements associated with this that are reflected here. There's not opportunities to just go in other locations. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Do we have precedent on someone granting us easement being this specific on utilization? Like hiking only
Oh, this
or no
might be
biking?
yours.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that precedent. You know, we'll give you an easement, but
Could it change with?
multi-use, it's always been a multi-use. It's never been hiking only until they acquired it.
Mhm.
There, but we, the property owners, they wanted of the trail things you're wanting to be here, but we're more willing to get behind it if the spiral staircase works.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand their point of view. It,
Don't want any what?
Special events.
We're not gonna keep track of that.
mhm.
We've provided money. We've let them name the trail.
Right.
You know.
Back. That's where really is dedicated, did have specific language about,
Okay, so it is out there. This isn't. Okay. Because at some point, it kind of feels like we're building a private trail for that neighborhood, which I don't love.
Well, it is. I mean, half of it's already there and well established. Do you mean the spiral staircase? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Okay, Duke, I hear you. I think we should just vote on this, and I think Jay can vote to hold off. I think people should just vote and we'll see how it.
And now we have an option 3.
Yes,
Mhm.
option 3.
So option 1 is both trails as drawn. Option 2 is just the pink trails, hiking only, and option 3 is the not crossing Australia Gulch and uphill biking on the connection from Sally Barbara to True Romance.
And just to clarify on option 3, that easement would still exist to build it at a future time, like that easement wouldn't go away.
Correct. Thank you, Jay. Good question.
Kristen, you want to?
No. I'm not ready.
We can pick on Dave again.
No.
He's fine.
I'd like to talk about it more.
Chris, here, we'll make Chris start again.
Throw the gauntlet. I've talked myself out of it. I'm voting no on all of it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, seriously?
Seriously.
Option 4.
Okay. All right.
That was a real zinger, Chris.
Well, I'll go with option 2. I might as well vote for what I really want.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Jay?
I'll go with you, Nikki. Option 3, I think provides the most flexibility, allows us to have some connectivity while also providing options moving forward if we deem that necessary.
Great. Kristen, you ready now?
Yeah.
I see the wheels turning.
Yep. I like option 3 because as we always do, we don't think about the winter. And I think it does create a really interesting opportunity to connect more things and stay off the road for almost the whole time if you're on skis. So I'm kind of compelled by being able to make spiral stairs and then up and then go up, or the option 3 of like uphill only biking. And it creates a good loop for, 6 months out of the year. So that's my final answer. I think I've said I wanted all of them.
I know, was there?
Let me really flush it out.
I'm with Chris.
Chris,
Nada, limonada.
okay.
CBW.
I'm with option 3. Bobby, I just want to say this because I'll be remiss if I don't. I have to punctuate Mark's comment. Like, I would be shocked if you were hiking on this trail and you even ran into a biker at all. I just think it's that diffuse, the use. Maybe, but I'm
Then
just,
we don't need it.
yeah, I know. I'm almost on your team.
Think of the winter.
People can go in the winter wherever they want. in the
Yeah,
winter.
winter is a
If
weird
it's not
time now.
cut in, nobody's gonna.
Duke
go.
goes up that way. You just got
Oh,
Duke's drive.
I go up spiral stairs in the winter and I would enjoy this connection because I used to just trespass up, I used to ski up here. And then I would go this way and it would.
Then I became stuff.
So if option 3 was the prevailing vote, how does that work with OSAC?
So then I think we talk and go back and make sure OSAC would be okay with that. I guess that, yeah, we'd want it to be option 3. If OSAC's good with that, we'll move forward. And if not, then we'll talk about it again some other time.
Is it worth communicating to OSAC that we had debate and some of our
Oh, yeah.
commissioners didn't want it at all? Just so
Absolutely.
they have that on their radar?
Yeah, Catherine and I can convey the
Okay.
character of this conversation.
Yeah, I think that's important with how nuanced the variety is.
You have to do it before they have the conversation though, not wait until they. have the-
I think we could also get a little more clarity. My understanding of their comments is it's really more just general habitat recognition. Like, do you need this, you need this additional connection to avoid that potential? As opposed to like, this is critical output or I'm fairly certain that's not what they're saying. I think it's fragmenting more habitat in general.
Yeah, because if you look at it, there is trail on 100% of the area around that.
Yeah,
gulch.
it's
So
dense.
Like a corridor.
Okay,
Wow.
that's a good,
what an
I think we're doing good work up here.
Surprising conversation.
Okay, I love
Well.
these two. All right, so now Copper Canyon, we get to do it again.
We agree way too much these days. It's not always been like.
This is great.
All right, we'll just jump right into discussion. Do you guys have any questions? I think we've had a good amount of time to talk and look and discuss, but I'm open to any more questions, but just kind of open it up to the question. maybe.
And Kristen has, to clarify, she's been up there, so she knows what we're talking
Yes,
about.
I have been on a field trip.
Yeah.
Just not today. And then I read the minutes and realized that this was my idea to do the field trip today. So apologize.
Well, it was beneficial for everybody that attended.
Yeah, great. Well,
There was no charcuterie board.
no, no.
Get to the top, David.
Stop.
Bobby, do you want to start us off just to keep mixing it up?
I don't want to oppose every single thing, so okay with me. Let's do it.
Man.
I know.
Come on, Bobby.
Not one that I will probably ever use, so if it makes some people happy, let's go for it.
I guess I would want to ask the commission how we respond when we see the public comment or the comments from the neighborhood. There was a lot of dissenting views on this, though the percentage was in favor of building it. So just curious if that strikes me, gives me a little heartburn, but
I have a reaction to that. Oh, if you want to go in order. that's
oh
fine.
no,
No,
I
I
just
think
was generally soliciting.
It's a very valid point that if the neighborhood is not really in favor of this and even the ones that say they like it also make negative comments, maybe that's not what this neighborhood really is. And is it going to benefit more than the neighborhood? And if it benefits more than the neighborhood, then the neighborhood isn't the final decider. I mean, it's our money, our rights to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
I agree with Bobby. I think that the neighborhood, I don't know exactly what the parameters were, but I think this trail does provide a really interesting connection to a lot of people that live up on Baldy that are full-time residents who want to get to the Baker's Tank area. And so I think that while maybe some of the people who are right on that road would oppose it, and I would expect most people, when you ask them, can we build something next to your house, they're gonna say no. But I do think that if we were to ask some of the residents that are a couple blocks away from this, that would use this a lot as a way to get down, that's not Juniata to town, but that's a connection to some of our other trails on that side, I think they would be really excited about this connection. So I'm supportive.
Yeah, I'm supportive. I think it would make sense if I wonder if their real issues are things that are there right now that maybe we could help with, like the social trails and the jumps and all that, and maybe just work with them to explain that, we've had this experience before, and creating directed experiences can, make everybody happy. People stop building the social trails and then they're in, we direct them down one. It actually might limit the things they think are noise and they're only going to get more of. So I think we continue to work with them and listen to them I don't know anybody who lives up there in that area. There's a couple of multifamily places up there. But I don't suspect there's a lot of active people trying to make a connection between the upper trails and, making that connection to Aspen Alley. But I do think it's valuable for the rest of the community.
Should I surprise you again? No.
Yes.
No, totally in favor. I think this is a good first step on connectivity for that side of town that has nothing right now. So totally in favor.
And the only thing to add is, as well, I'm in favor. The only thing to add is, that area's been so disturbed over the, past decades or century or half century or whatever it is, that I think being up there, doing the site visits, seeing what it is, that I don't see it like us deteriorating it further, and I think it'll be a great connector. And
There's
appreciate
no-
it to Todd for bringing it forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good. A few people mentioned erosion in the survey, just the nature of building it. I assume you have no actual concerns about that with the build. Yeah. Okay. yeah, it is, to your point, Jay, very disturbed by the minors. So, okay. Great. That was so concise and phew, mellow. We just lost all, we ran out of steam.
Always go last with both
Okay.
sides.
Yeah. Okay, you good there? dude?
We'll be discussing this in September, so we'll follow up.
Okay, okay. All right, so other matters related to open space. Anyone got anything? I just wanted to highlight it's Tony's tenure and Mark's tenure. Tony's on 10 seasonal and 10 full-time. Mark's 20. Mark started the town of Breckenridge.
It's like it feels like it.
Congrats, that's cool.
Guys. Can't do without you both.
Would have brought cupcakes or something.
Brownies.
Brought so many brownies.
We have a lot of.
Okay, good there. All right, so council matters related to open space, so jail, fill us in.
You know, the biggest thing is the elephant in the room with Aspen Alley. Wanted to address council's rationale for not going with BOSAC's recommendation, and it came down to two things. It was the brevity in the time period, meaning 3 weeks of leaf peeping season that was only marked by not by traffic counters, not by, you know, people being up there with clickers or anything, but just with clicks on a website to Aspen Alley. And that just was not a strong enough evidence pool to say, okay, for these 3 weeks, we're going to try to change everyone's behavior. And furthermore, and point two is that it was likely to be for one season, perhaps two. And so the amount of human resources, financial resources, VMS boards, confusion of the guests for a total of between 3 and 6 weeks just seemed like it wasn't the most pragmatic solution at the time. I think that, you know, and as I mentioned during it, that the process of discussing it and going through it and looking at it from all different angles was probably the most valuable piece of this. And I'm happy to see that, you know, this group as well as council went through that and kind of analyze what that would look like to separate user groups by day to in an environment that is different than Denver. So I think if anyone has any feedback or questions.
No, kind of a question. Is there anything more that we can do as a collective to bring some of those higher level learnings that you kind of eventually put in front of council to bear when we discuss it? You know, is there, you know, as you guys were kind of considering some of the other factors that were involved, is there anything that we can be doing as a commission to consider some of that? Or did we do our part? I guess it'd be.
I think that council took BOSAC's recommendation to heart and very seriously. I think if there was alternative situations on the ground, if this was something that we were going to have to do for 5 years, or if we were going to have to do it for an entire season from start to finish, I think it would have been more or less no brainer. It was just the going through the exercise and thinking of guests who have been up here for years. Don't go on to Trail Forks, don't go on to MTV Project and come into another sign that says you are not allowed here. It felt like a bridge too far for the majority of council. And so I think this group did exactly what they were supposed to do, put forth a great recommendation with a lot of thought behind it. And it was just some of the resource management that made it seem untenable. And having DMS signs, you know, littering that whole area during arguably one of the more beautiful times of the year, and trying to change people's behavior for such a small period, and then having it revert back, you know, 21 days later. I think that was tough. Those are those giant boards that either the sheriff, there's one,
Litter the town right now.
I just wanted to echo what Jay said. I think you, as a BOSAC, did what you were supposed to, and that's base it on open space values. I think it would get dangerous if you guys started to try to think as a council, because they'll bring other considerations in. And your focus is more narrow, so.
I have some questions. Totally hear where you're coming from. I would still disagree. I think it is still really needed. And when I reflect on what the town says you can and cannot do, I think a safety concern would trump the concern that we're being a little too paternalistic and telling people what they can't do. I can think of a lot of other examples that I can see where people would feel frustrated that that we have a lot of rules, but I think this one's like a real safety concern. And so that's where I would push back. I also wonder, you mentioned like for 2 seasons, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's a given that we're going to get an uphill trail. That has been communicated to us as a really hard, long process. And so if we have an uphill Aspen Alley Trail in 2 seasons, I feel like that would be a miracle, but maybe I'm totally wrong. But we've been asking for that for a really long time. So I kind of think from my perspective, it was a trial run for now and not necessarily a given that it would only be 21 days next year and then it would be over. I think we could have considered doing it for the whole season, the next season, and then we could have also considered what other seasons we might be doing it if we're not going to get that uphill trail or if it's going to take 5 years to get that uphill trail. I just worry that we're just kicking the can down the road and then we're just going to have an accident and then we're going to have to do this. So that's kind of my concern, and totally appreciate both of your comments that you can consider what us as a narrow scope. That's exactly what happened with the wildlife corridor, and definitely understood the perspective because we don't have that whole vision of the broader budget constraints. And so that was a really good first example of how BOSAC plays into the decisions that council makes. But I think with this one, I still feel pretty strongly. But anyway, I appreciate that everyone thought we had a thoughtful consideration about it.
Both your points were brought up and discussed.
Really? Okay. Okay, great.
And not that I want to go tit for tat on any of it, but the thought was, and we talked about it briefly here, but where the trail is super cluttered, there's less of a safety concern than when it's a little bit more sparse. And then the uphill, we just did the NEPA application a couple weeks ago, and we had never marked it before. And so it is the first real step towards it, although we've been talking about it for a long time. And so now to have that in process, I think staff is very optimistic that it'll happen in the next 2 years.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Which would be great for everyone.
The real solution.
Yep. Great, thank you.
David, anything?
Yeah, I can appreciate the fact that, you know, this group is concerned with a very narrow set of things before them, and, you know, councils have lots to consider. I think I agree. I listened to the conversation kind of off and on. I had it on, and it seemed like it was an avatar for the stories that are in the paper versus something really about the trail regulation, you know, undoing sins and all that. And I kind of feel like this was low hanging fruit. And I was at the golf course last night with some folks too. They've lived here a long time as a couple, and they've been really involved in the community. And they just said, I don't understand why this town is so afraid to try things, which was interesting. But I get it. I think the only thing that I get a little bit worried about is that this is a jointly managed area. And then OSAC, council hadn't even heard OSAC's comments on it. And I kind of wish there was a little bit more of like, what does everybody think in this group if we're jointly managed? It's Forest Service land, right? And so I think that's sort of the interesting part, because it is, it's not in town. So that's kind of I think that's the heartburn that I have about it. But I will also say that I probably should not have opined on this, because for the county, it was an administrative decision. So I didn't have to go to the board. I find it weird that council spent so long on this in light of everything else. But, everybody we love our trails, we love our system. And I appreciate everybody who struggled over this, because, it's balanced. So.
Very cool. Well, thank you for the feedback.
Say too, I just want to add, I think for me, there was heartburn just knowing this was the second recommendation that was turned down, where it was a 6-1 vote. That's just a tough pill to swallow. And Mark, I appreciate what you're saying, but I just hope our voices are being heard, our recommendations are being heard. Jay, you're in a tough spot because you have to communicate what our board says, but you also have to vote as an individual council member. Duke, when he presents, has to remain unbiased, but when you have a staff recommendation, an OSAC recommendation, and a BOSAC recommendation, it's just like, I just really, really hope we're being heard. And it sounds like, in your estimation, we are. I don't know if that came across to me when I listened to the conversation, frankly. I didn't hear much of any mention of our conversation. I think to Kristen's point, it seemed to me that they thought it was a sure bet that this new uphill route would be built. I didn't get the sense that despite Duke saying it wasn't a guarantee, and it sounds like it's likely, but not a for sure thing. So, and that's no criticism of you, but I do say this out loud in hopes that council hears that we hope that they're listening.
I can assure you they are.
Okay. No.
Just two quick other things. Obviously, BIFA's going on right now. To a lot of our discussion prior, when Tamara was up here talking about some of the things that were interesting, I encourage everyone to go and take a look at the marble exhibit and take a look at the comments that, the discussion we had of how much is that bringing people up to Little Mountain? What is the degradation that's occurring, if any? And what's the value of having that remain if that was an option? I think we're going to see Tamara here next month to kind of discuss that piece. I went up there with my girls, and I felt like the trio was more disruptive to the area around than the marble course, as people were putting down blankets and over the things and stomping and doing all the things. And so while I think it's great exposure for our open space, and I'm fully supportive, it'd be interesting to see. I'd love everyone's perspective on that.
We went to the marble thing.
Yeah.
And the signage to get you there was terrible.
Mhm.
And there was nothing that told me to go up to Little Mountain.
Oh.
No, we bought the damn marble.
Jay and Bobby, how hard was it to buy the marble? Can you speak to where you got your marble?
There's only two places to buy it. You had to buy it before you got to the trail. And I talked to a number of people who said, well, how do I get a marble? And it was too far away. They were not going to do it because they weren't going to go back to town to get the marble. And that bin, that was full of trash. There were no marbles in the bin. The idea was people would drop their marbles off and then give them away instead of sell them.
The flip side of that, which I got to experience, was my girls handing marbles to kids that were up there and letting them put them down. I think that was
A good lesson for
yeah,
the-
it was a great experience for everyone involved at that point. So and then we had the groundbreaking for runway as well on Tuesday. So not really open space, but open space parallel, let's just say. So that's on its way.
Saw the slow-mo video of you shoveling dirt.
I actually didn't end up with a shovel, but yes, there was people with,
Rest of the-
I was just sitting back there. It was a government job. I was watching.
Okay, thanks, Jay. How many units is that?
So the first phase is 81 with a total of 148 if we move forward with the second phase. And I intentionally keep comments to very narrow to open space, and when I err narrower. And so if any of you guys have any desire for discussion of anything that's going on with town that has to do with anything, please let me know. I'm happy to talk about it. It's just, was my guidance was to keep it as narrow as possible. So if you guys want to talk runway, if you want to talk sustainability or anything, I actually do. I love it. So by all means.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, think we're done.
I have, I just wanted to add, just so you guys all hear it, after council discussed Aspen Alley, OSAC discussed it, and Catherine and I were in agreement. Just like Jay said, the process of the discussion was valuable. And, you know, we're only getting busier. This might be something that we are faced with in the future. And so we didn't disclose the outcome of the council discussion when they had their discussion. And so just so you're aware, they had a healthy discussion, same thing, focused on open space values, and they were, I think it was 7-1 in favor of alternating day use restrictions. And they did know that BOSAC had recommended that, but a lot of the same reasons. You know, yes, it might be unwelcoming for some, but overall it's a more welcoming experience for the greater good. They did think it was had risen to the threshold of needing attention and some heavier management. Peter Grosich made a point that hadn't been brought up here, which I thought was really good, which is that, and it came up today at Copper Canyon, that there really is kind of, I think somebody called it a desert of trails on the south side of the network. So Peter was a dissenting vote saying, if you close this to one user group, you're cutting off a key connection south, or, you know, on the south side. And that was his biggest concern, was just like, you're displacing someone that doesn't have an alternative route. But anyway, that's where they landed. And they appreciated being able to have I think they did, being able to have the conversation after which we were like, and here's what council said.
Great. Thanks, Duke.
Mhm.
Okay, I will move to adjourn.
So.
Jinx.
Everybody, good one.
Record books.
It's been so quiet.